I don't like that intro song. It's sad. That intro song is sad. You know. How's it going, guys? This is Ideas of Ice and Fire, and this is my Q&A for Game of Thrones Season 7. This will be session 5 or 6. It's either 5 or 6. I'll be joined by Lucifer Means Lightbringer pretty soon, and we're going to discuss some things that I know you guys want to talk about. I'm going to answer some of you guys' questions. I'm going to take some chat questions, and it's going to be great. It's going to be so much fun. While we're waiting on our buddy LML, I'm going to take this question. Couldn't Bran have sent a dream to Dany telling her to head north, thus cutting set out of the stupid wait? Also, would it not have been better and cooler to the casual viewers had the walkers used giants with bows and arrows to take down the dragons? Both of these possibilities have set up in previous episodes and seasons and would have made more sense. Poor writing. Well, I think that it would have made more sense for Bran to send Daenerys a vision. I also think that it would have made more sense for them to use Melisandre again. Melisandre, clearly they have the actress. She could have seen something in the flames. She could have told Daenerys beforehand. So it would have made more sense that she got there sooner, because she was warned beforehand by Melisandre. So that kind of would have solved the issue as well. And also, as far as the Night King and his javelin skills versus them using the giants, I think they really just wanted to establish that the Night King is kind of, like a supervillain, and he's got super strength, and, he's a really, really powerful guy. And I think that's what they were trying to get across. But it would have made more sense. It would have been more realistic, since they do have the white giants for, and they use one of the bow and arrows, because we see in the battle at the wall that, a giant with an arrow is no joke. When it hit that guy, it was pretty forceful. So I'm going to look at the chat now that I've answered a question from my review. Going to look at the chat and see if anybody has any questions. Will Jay kill D? Are you asking if Jon will kill Daenerys? Are you referring to the Nisa prophecy, I think? Well, back in the day, I don't know how many of you know the story of Lightbringer. Back in the day, this guy named Azor Ahai, he was making this sword, and he kept making different sacrifices, but he could never get the sword to, become magical and light on fire. And finally, he shoved his sword to the heart of the woman that he loved most, Nisa, and when he pulled it out, it was flaming. This person is asking if I think this prophecy, or this legend, will repeat itself again with Jon Snow and Daenerys. And my answer is no. I don't think that's happening again. I liked the idea, kind of, but I don't see that. I don't see that specific legend being, done exactly the same way again. So I don't think Jon Snow is plunging his sword through Daenerys. Although a lot of people do. That's not my personal opinion on the matter. I think it's more symbolic. I think it's more symbolic than anything. I don't see that being what actually happens in the book or the show. So, alright, so let's take another question. What future role do you think Melisandre might have? Well, if we're talking about the show, Melisandre does say that she's doomed to die in Westeros, and that she will return. So I think that she'll probably be sacrificing herself for some other purpose, for some greater purpose. She's going to Volantis, which is where the largest temple of the Red Priesthood is in the entire world right now. So I think that she's going there to maybe get counsel and to tell them what she's learned and what she's seen. And she'll return to Westeros and she'll do something big because she is, I think, looking for redemption. She's looking to be penitent. And she wants to die, I think, on the inside. Judging by what was going on with her last season, and now, she's lived for so long, and I think deep down that she wants to die. So I think dying for a greater purpose would suit Melisandre. Alright, let's answer another question. Isn't each dragon supposed to have a rider? Well, theoretically. You see, in the books, Daenerys has not quite gained full control over her dragons, and I don't know if she ever will. Like in the show, they've seemed to kind of gone back on that. By last season, she's got full control of them for really no reason. All right, Lucifer means Lightbringer is coming in, guys. How's it going, LML?
What's up there, Quinn? How's it going?
It's going good. I'm hearing some background noise. It's kind of staticky.
I don't have any speakers on. There shouldn't be any. Is it in background noise?
Yeah, it's like you're not clear at all. It's kind of like shh.
I'll hang up and call you back.
All right. Well, we'll get him back on and see if he can figure out what's going on with his speaker situation. Let's see if this gets cleared up. Ring, ring, ring. Ring, 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 ring.
One more time. How's that sound?
Better. Talk some more.
Better?
It's better, but
okay, I'll keep talking.
It's better, but it's quite fuzzy. It's quite fuzzy. I'm not sure what's going on.
Fuzzy, huh?
Yeah.
That's fucking weird.
Uh-huh.
Why would it be fuzzy? Is it like too quiet or too loud?
Not quite. It's not. See, when you're talking, it's like there's rain in the background. It's like you're standing outside and it's raining.
I'm definitely not standing in the rain.
It's actually gotten a little bit better now. I think it's tolerable.
Okay. Well, I've had fucked up sound almost every time I've gotten on your show, and I'd really like to avoid doing that again.
Yeah.
How's this now? Is this any better?
It's tolerable at this point. Yeah, it's not bad anymore. Yeah. Speak some more. Give me a sentence.
Sounds like rain. Here is a sentence about ice and fire.
I think that sounds pretty good. Yeah.
Sounds like rain.
Okay.
Purple rain.
Okay. So let me get to... Okay, well, I guess since you're here now, let's talk about, what everyone wants to talk about, which is this white dragon or ice dragon, depending on, who you ask. Now, we saw the Night King.
What is it?
Yeah, what is it? What's
going on?
Is
it a White Walker dragon? A walking white dragon? A flying white dragon? Is it WHITE or WIGHT white?
Is it a blue ice white dragon from Yu-Gi-Oh? Okay, so...
Well, the good news is that...
The good news is that what?
The good news is that when we talked about this last night, we seemed to basically agree.
Yeah. So, like I said to you last night, there's like a distinction between, what we think should happen and what, they're going to do in the show, Like there's a distinction between like what we think is what we think should logically happen, and what they're going to do. Because go ahead.
I was going to say we should start off by laying out the book canon on ice dragons and white dragons, and from there we can make sense of what the show has created, I think.
All right. So,
So,
go
you want
ahead.
to go ahead and I'll pull up. You go ahead and start and talk about. Uh, we'll just go ahead and kick that off, and I will pull up the quote about the ice dragon from the world of Ice and
Wow,
Fire.
your sound just got really crazy. It was like an uprising of shh. It's really weird. It's doing some really weird things.
Hmm. I don't know what
It
to say
sounds like
about
there's
that. Let me
machinery going on in the background.
Okay, let me just shut down and restart and stuff, and I'll call you back. Go
All
ahead
right.
and answer some questions.
Yeah,
In
I
like five
will.
minutes, and I'll call you
Yeah.
back.
Yeah, so we'll try and get him back on in a little bit when his sound is fixed because that's going to be a problem definitely. But I'll go ahead and talk about the ice dragon a little bit. So, as far as the ice dragon goes, in the show, what we see is we see a fire dragon, and we see that dragon get extinguished. It's hit with an ice spear, and it falls into frozen lake, and it's underwater. So that fire has been completely extinguished. And then you get the Night King using the whites to pull him back up out, and he's using ice magic to bring him back to life. So reasonably, you would think that there would no longer be a fire breath. You wouldn't think that it would be able to produce fire anymore, since this is something that's dead. Its organs really shouldn't be working, and on top of that, it's been reanimated by ice. So you would think that it would breathe something like frost. Um, but in the show, I'm pretty much convinced that it's still going to be fire. They're going to turn the fire blue because I'm pretty sure they're going to use this dragon to go for the wall and melt a hole in the wall so that the others, so that the whites and the armies of the dead can move through it. So it'll be more than likely blue fire that's still hot, which you can argue whether or not that makes sense. But LML, when he gets back, he does have some really interesting he does have some really interesting thoughts on this, but I'll let him tell you all about it. Sounds like a construction zone. Yeah, it like the sound is not good. We're trying to get Lucifer's sound going good. So I'll take some more questions in the chat. What if they combined John and Aegon into one character, and Aegon is actually RLA in the books? In the book, and John's parents are someone else in the book. Okay, that's way too complicated for right now. We can't get into the interweavings of RLLJ. Let's kind of keep it geared towards, the next episode in Game of Thrones in the future season, and what's to come in Game of Thrones. We can do the book stuff, but I can't, turn my brain around and go weaving through all these like different types of different combinations of R L Q X Y Q and A. What's dead may never die. How can Night King just reanimate it to breathe fire? Just rean. I'm pretty sure you're trying to say reanimate. Reinnervate. Reinnervate is to breathe fire. I don't think reinnervate is a word. I don't know. I'm not sure what you're trying to say. How do they have time for John and Danny romance, but they didn't have time for the Aegon or Dorne plot line? Well, maybe the Dawn and Danny romance is actually something that's crucial to the plot because we don't know whether or not George R. Martin is going to actually do that. I'm pretty sure it's not going to be the same way that it's happening here. It's going to make more sense. He's going to have more time to develop the romance if it does happen. But maybe the John and Danny getting together is actually something that's supposed to happen because think about it, kind of does make reasonable sense if Jon Snow does become king in the North in the books like in the show. If that does happen, it would make sense for the Danny Jon marriage. And also, if Jon Snow is indeed the son of Rhaegar Targaryen in the books, then it makes sense that that Danny would marry him because they are both Targaryens. She would be his aunt. And, the Targaryens married aunts and nephews, uncle to niece, sister and brother. They've done that for so long, so it totally aligns with everything that we know. Okay, So let's get another one of these questions from my last video. Why didn't they bring Dragonglass? How does Uncle Benjen feed his horse and keep it alive? No grass up there. Interesting. It could be an undead horse. I'm not entirely sure if his horse is undead or not. Um, but why didn't they bring the Dragonglass? I think that someone said that Jorah had Dragonglass, but I agree they should have brought more. If they've been trying to establish this season that Dragonglass also kills whites and not just the others. So it would have made perfect sense for all of them, for Jon Snow to say before they leave, oh, and just leave the regular swords behind. Let's all just grab Dragonglass because that's what we're going to need to fight them. That would have kind of made more sense if they all just had Dragonglass, except Jon. He's got the Valyrian steel, and you assume that Valyrian steel has all of the properties of Dragonglass and can do all the things that Dragonglass can do, except perhaps even better. Okay. Have you read the leaks for episode 7? And if so, are you disappointed? I read them a long time ago, but I really don't remember what happens, so I can't. And we're not talking about the leaks in this, anyways. Okay. What are you going to say when Arya kills the Night King? It's going to happen. Well, I think I said before that I think that if it does happen, it would be kind of like an allusion to the Lord of the Rings, where you have Eowyn making the final blow against the Witch King Vangmar, and he says to her, she says to him, "I will hinder you," and he says, "No mortal man can hinder me, or no living man can hinder me," and she says, "No man am I," basically. She says, because I'm a woman, I'm not a man. So that's kind of the same phrase, Arya saying, like the Night King might say, "I am no one," and then Arya'd say, no, well, he'd say, "No man can kill me," and she'd be like, "I'm no one." It's kind of the same sentence, kind of the same play on words going on there. So I'd see that as kind of a reference to the Lord of the Rings. I also think that it would kind of match if Brienne did it. If Brienne was the one that slayed the Night King, I've kind of thought that'd be a cool idea for a while now, because if you take the Lord of the Rings comparison and you take Eowyn, she's a woman that dresses like a man so that she can fight in the war. That's kind of Brienne's whole thing. She's been dressing like a man this entire time, and kicking men's asses too. She's better than most men at what she does, and it would kind of make sense for the Night King to be like, "No man can kill me," and she'd say, "No man am I." But then again, that's kind of like it's kind of a direct ripoff from the Lord of the Rings almost. If it's like that, it's kind of like if it's I mean, if it was that exact line, it would be kind of a direct ripoff. So I don't know if we'll get the line, but I think it would be cool if Brienne is actually the one that sticks it to the Night's King. And she does have her Valyrian steel sword, Oathkeeper. So there's got to be some use for that, right? Let's take some chat questions. Are Arya and Sansa gonna kill Littlefinger with hot lesbian sex threesome? I don't think so. I really don't, sir. I really don't think that's going to happen. But I appreciate the question. Do you think Bran's vision of a dragon over King's Landing will be seen in episode 7? Perhaps Dany will fly to the dragon pit. Oh, I see. I hadn't thought about that, but that has to happen, sometime soon. Because if we remember, so I think you're right. I think it will be hopefully next episode, and hopefully they make the images align and that it actually looks good. Because if we remember season 2, Dany's vision, Daenerys' vision in the House of the Undying, she actually sees the throne room, and it looks like it's been attacked from overhead by a dragon, and there's like snow falling in, or some have even said that it's ash. It's either ash or snow. And, winter is there. Winter is finally there, and she's walking through like the desolated castle, the desolated Red Keep. So that's got to happen pretty soon. And the way that I think it's gonna happen, I think that Cersei will try something. I don't know if this is. I don't know. I don't think this is happening in the next episode, but I think that Cersei will end up, igniting King's Landing. I think that it'll end up going up in flames, and that's what Daenerys was kind of seeing. And we're working on getting LML on the stream. We just got to fix that sound issue because it was getting kind of jarring. at one point. Has Cersei invited other lords and ladies of other great houses too? Who's alive, ruling what, and willing to attend? Is Arya bluffing? That's a lot in one. See, I don't know if Cersei has brought any of the other great houses. I think at this point, what the show is trying to do is they're saying that this is the point where you see all of the characters together. This is a kind of a. I don't want to judge it before I see it, but it's kind of like it's kind of like a big fan service moment. They're like, here are all the characters that you know and love together in one place for the first time ever. So I think that's what they're going for more so than, look at all the lords of Westeros. Leave that up to George R. R. Martin. I don't know if you'll get a scene like this in the books, but if it was in the books, we'd have way more. You'd have that random lord from over there, and you'd have that random lord from over there. But since it's the show and they're streamlining it and they don't really care about that type of stuff, we've got people. They're admitting at this point that they don't really care about all the extra stuff. They're just trying to get to the main points. So I wouldn't count on seeing any other lords, but we might get a few others scattered through. They might. What do you think about Arya killing Jaime? Wait, what do you think about Arya killing Jaime and then Jaime Arya killing Cersei and fulfilling the Valonqar prophecy? Yeah, that's an interesting question because does Valonqar mean little brother? Or does it mean little sibling? Because we know that Valerian is supposed to be gender neutral. So it could mean little sister, and that could be Arya, you know. But then again, Jaime only has one hand. So does putting on the face well, so like what I'm asking is if Arya is Arya gonna put on the face, then her hand, shrivels away, and then she puts on Jaime's gold hand, and then she strangles Cersei with a gold hand and a regular hand. That's I'm just questioning the logistics. I don't know if she's gonna turn into. I don't know if she's gonna turn into Jaime to strangle Cersei if that does happen. And quite frankly, I wouldn't like that very much. I wouldn't, honestly. I think that's kind of silly. And I definitely don't think that's happening in the books. So let's see. What's going to happen to Asha Yara? I'm pretty sure Euron is going to be using Asha Yara as his dog right now. She's kind of his pet that he's going to keep on a leash and close by. And kind of torture her before he finally kills her. She's getting something. She's getting a kind of Reek-esque treatment from Euron. Because they do want to show you, the extent of his evil. What's happened to all those people that Cersei has been keeping in the dungeons? What happened to Septa Unella? We haven't heard from her in a while, so maybe we'll get like a scene from Septa Unella, and you'll see if she's still down there and what she's doing. I'm curious to see what happened to the Sand Snakes too. Is the daughter dead yet? Because I'm kind of hoping that she is. And what's going on with Illyria? Because I don't want Illyria to escape. I want Illyria to die. And I know I just kind of went on a tangent there, but bear with me. I've still got the Dorne hate, kind of seeping below the surface. What do you think about the Mummer's Dragon? Do you think that Aegon is a Blackfire? Now, this is a question from the books. If you don't realize, in the books, there's a whole nother storyline going on involving who is a person who is supposedly Daenerys' nephew, and that would be Rhaegar Targaryen's first son, Aegon, and he is with Jon Connington, who was Rhaegar's very close friend, and Jon Connington is also seemingly in love with Rhaegar Targaryen, so he's taking care of his quote-unquote son. But, a lot of us have the idea that this son of Rhaegar is not really Rhaegar's son, but is indeed a Blackfire Targaryen. And I pretty much agree with this theory. I think that Illyrio Mopapas, the man that, from season 1 that was hosting Daenerys and her brother at his house, I'm pretty sure that Aegon was his son and that he was in love with a Blackfire Targaryen because he talks about his wife and her yellow hair. And so I'm pretty sure he was in love with a Blackfire Targaryen, and this is his son with her. So that's why, because, his whole thing, he was leading Daenerys and Viserys into the desert to die so that he could, set Aegon in place as the ruler of Westeros. But after a while, his plan, it changed, and he wanted Aegon to marry Daenerys, and but then the plan changed again, and now Aegon is trying to take Westeros for himself. He's gone ahead and He's gone ahead and attacked Westeros, and he's trying to conquer himself. So that's the whole nother storyline that's going on. That's not in the show. But yes, to answer your question straightforward, I do think Aegon is a fake Targaryen. I do think that he is a Blackfire. I'm talking about the books. Like I said, I'm talking about the books. That's the level of how it's diverged. So that's what the fuck I'm talking about, Paul Armstrong. I'm talking about Aegon Targaryen. Do you think that George R. R. Martin will ever finish the books? I think so. I think The Winds of Winter will be out next year, and hopefully we get A Dream of Spring. See, I have for some reason I'm thinking that A Dream of Spring will be come out sooner than The Winds of Winter, because Winds of Winter is where he's really tying up all the loose ends, and it's all the main stuff, and then A Dream of Spring will be more finishing it. How's it going, man?
How's it going, Quinn? Tell me how I sound, buddy.
You sound pretty good.
All right. That's fucking fantastic.
All right, so I know you had some. I've already said a little bit about the White Dragon. So yeah, so you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I caught some of that while I was doing all my technical mumbo jumbo, and like I was saying before, we basically agree on the principle of what's going on here. The dragon was killed by the ice spear, which we'll talk about in a second. But once it's dead, its fire goes out. A dragon is, to me, a dragon is like a flying volcano. The eggs are made of stone, and the inside of the dragon is basically fire. Its blood is like fire. So if you think about it, it's basically stone and fire. It's kind of like a flying volcano, like I was saying.
Mm-hmm.
And when it dies, to me, it turns to stone, essentially, or it's kind of like stone. Like its bones are like steel, etc., etc. So, and I'm speaking kind of symbolically, but the point is the fire goes out when it dies, especially if it falls in a frozen lake. It's very like a hot sword being tempered, almost, in cold water. And so when it comes out, it's dead, and then the thing that animates it is a cold life force of the others, like you were saying. So it's now animated by cold. So theoretically, whatever it breathes out, it should be cold in my mind. And I heard what you were saying about you think what the show is going to do, and I'll address that in a second, I guess. But my main point is that logically, just in show canon, based on what they've shown us, that thing should only be able to breathe cold because it's animated by the cold magic of the others. However, there's a whole lot of stuff in the books about cold being able to burn in its own kind of way, and that's what we're going to get into. So,
yes.
With me, are we together so far?
Yes.
I'll be disappointed if they use it to melt. If the fire is still hot and it melts the wall, that won't make sense to me.
I'm thinking that in the show that the fire is definitely gonna be hot, and that they're gonna march on the wall with it. Because I don't think I don't think it's an ice dragon. I think it should be an ice dragon. I think it should breathe something cold, but I think that it's not. That's not. I don't think that's the direction that they're taking it. But we will see.
I agree they can do whatever they want.
Mm-hmm.
However, given what they've shown, so let's address the whole thing about White Walker Dragon, White Dragon, whatever. Some people are pointing out that the Night King, and you can stop me if you've just already said all this, but the Night King doesn't have to touch dead corpses to raise them as whites. He just lifts his hands or thinks about it, and they raise. That's what we've seen.
Yes.
Whereas Craster's babies, he touches them, and then their eyes turn blue, and they transform, and those become White Walkers. Now, the dragon is a mix of both, because it's definitely dead.
Yes.
Okay? It's not transformed while it's alive like Craster's babies. However, he touches it, and the eye turns blue, and that is kind of like Craster's babies. And so that's where the confusion is coming.
Hmm.
So I suspect that the answer is that it simply looked cooler. I mean, he's basically raising it like a white, but it looks cooler to have him touch it. Simple as that. Or you could say, well, it's a really big corpse, so it helps to have direct contact. It's like a heavy lift or something like that. I could buy that too.
It's
But I
definitely
don't
a
know.
white. It's
Right.
definitely a white. It was dead, so it's something that's been brought back from death. So it's a white.
But also, if it was just a reanimated corpse, then it probably shouldn't be able to breathe anything because
Hmm.
its fires have been extinguished. It should probably just be a big flying monster. However, I suspect they'll have it breathe something because that's much cooler. So
Yeah, you would. Otherwise, why have a dragon? I mean, it can fly, but they're not gonna take away that most iconic bit. It's gonna breathe something. You can be assured of that. Um,
now the thing is, Gray Area did a really cool video about, is it a White Walker dragon or a white dragon?
mhm.
And she was playing around with those terms. And I recommend the video because she makes a lot of good points. Um, I guess what I would like to say is that the ice dragon from the world of Ice and Fire is a perfect parallel for the others in that it melts when it dies, just like an other does. And it's basically made out of ice. So I'm going to read from the world of Ice and Fire, and this is a description of the legend of the ice dragon. And this is really a collection of tales about the Shivering Sea in the far north. It says, of all the queer and fabulous denizens of the Shivering Sea, however, the greatest are the ice dragons. Colossal beasts, many times larger than the dragons of Lyria, are said to be made of living ice, with eyes of pale blue crystal and vast translucent wings, through which the moon and stars can be glimpsed as they wheel across the sky. Whereas common dragons, if any dragon can truly be said to be common, breathe flame, ice dragons supposedly breathe cold, a chill so terrible that it can freeze a man solid in half a heartbeat. And George Martin also wrote a short story called The Ice Dragon, and there's an ice dragon that befriends a girl, the main character in the story. And those ice dragons match this description exactly. They breathe cold, their wings are translucent, they have those blue eyes like the others do, and then the whole idea of being living ice. It's exactly the same concept.
Hmm.
So you can see there's a lot of differences between that and what we see on the show with Viserion.
Yes. I want to answer one question that someone said in the chat that I don't know if I've ever answered this on my channel before. They said, "Aren't they technically wyverns?" And I just want to say that they're whatever George R. Martin says they are. If he called them cats, they'd be cats because it's his series. All right. The wyvern versus dragon argument is so stupid. It doesn't matter. It all that matters is what the author calls them. You can call them anything. So that's my answer.
Hey, I'm seeing that the audio is still bad. I just turned my mic sensitivity down. Is that a little better?
It
People in the
did.
chat.
It did do that rising thing again, where it sounded like a motor, but it didn't get as bad as last time, and it went away. So I didn't bother saying anything.
A rising thing like a motor?
Yeah, it was. It's almost like there's a machine sometimes in the background, and I can't hear it at all now. But like just then, it was kind of like I don't know. It's very weird.
Okay, well, damn. I don't know what to say about that.
I mean, yeah, it's not happening now, so we can just continue with the stream.
Okay, cool. Well, let me know, people, if something gets weird.
All right.
So now we've got that description of the ice dragon, and we can see what that is. And the other thing about the ice dragon is that when it melts, it's said to. Okay, so here it is right here. Though an amusing notion and not without a certain elegance, this remains a pure conjecture. As ice dragons supposedly melt when slain, no actual proof of their existence has ever been found. So that's why I say a true ice dragon from the books would be a good parallel to the others,
Hmm.
because they melt like a puddle. Whereas this thing, if it's killed, I don't know if it'll. Yeah, I expect it to be like a white.
Yeah, it'll just kind of just stop moving because an ice dragon is supposed to be it's like ice. It's like living ice, you know. What mean, I've been under the impression that what dragons are is like living fire because like Quaith says dragons are fire made flesh. And the books kind of describe the others as kind of ice made flesh. That's kind of what they are. But they've been different. Dragons have been different in the show, and in one because if you remember in Dance with Dragons in the fighting pits in Marine, its blood is kind of like molten, but in the show it's got regular blood. It's got red blood. It's got like normal animal blood or something like that. So that right there is kind of a difference book to show, I think, uh, going on with dragons. And I think that could factor into this as well. Because I don't think that in the books that I don't think that a dragon is gonna die in the books and be converted into a white. I think when Daenerys loses one of her dragons, because I think she is gonna lose one, and I think when that happens, it's gonna be due to Euron and his dragon binder. I think that's the reason that one of her dragons is gonna be lost. And if a nice dragon does show up, I think this is a dragon that has already existed somewhere in the north, and it's just making an appearance in the finale, I guess.
Yeah, I would expect that an ice dragon could fly right out of the heart of winter
Hmm.
if one exists. And I kind of think, and we talked about this last night, like the others and the ice dragons, these are George's baby as far as like creating fantasy monsters. Like everyone's done flaming swords and dragons, and George has those too. But what he's the walkers are kind of his baby, and so I just expect like how could he keep the ice dragon in the garage? How could he keep it in the hangar? He's got to bring it out for a flight somewhere.
Yeah, yeah, because
But I
I've heard
Go
that
ahead.
he's even said that he's even claimed to have invented the ice dragon. So yeah, why would he not put that in his magnum opus series? Because this is what this is. This is George R. R.
Exactly.
Martin's. This is his baby. So this is. I feel like this is what he wants to be known for because when he says that when he started to write this series, it's like he never thought it could be adapted. He just wanted to like kind of let his imagination flow. And he's put things from all of his other books into Saga of Ice and Fire. Like little things throughout, like themes and kind of stories, and even names have been transferred. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
So now, so I also want to comment what you were saying. I definitely agree that it's probably going to be Euron stealing a dragon in the books, and I even think there's a chance he might like kidnap Daenerys or take Daenerys prisoner or something like that. I mean, it's probably. I mean, I expect it's more likely Danny will make the big triumphant return, more like she did in the show with big armies and fleets and stuff. But I could just see that going wrong somehow.
Uh-huh.
And because what's Euron's plan? Like we really don't know. Is
We
he
don't.
actually in Slaver's Bay or on the way to Slaver's Bay? Or does he just have agents there? How does he expect Victarion using the dragon horn to give him a dragon? Like we don't
Yeah.
know how he's expecting that to work out yet.
I think he has some insight that we don't know about. Because, Daenerys does get that vision of the corpse on the prow of the ship headed her way, or she gets that prophecy. And, we know that Euron ties corpses. In the Forsaken chapter, he ties corpses to the prows of all of his ships. So it seems like what she's seeing is the arrival of Euron in Slaver's Bay. Uh, Euron definitely knows more than I think he told Victarion. I think that's pretty evident in the Forsaken chapter. He's gotten these ideas from somewhere. He's got like this kind of a god complex. He sees himself as a god. He thinks that for a reason. I don't think he's just kind of. Well, he's certainly not the show you're on. I don't think he's just kind of. I think he has a very intricate plan, and I think it's more mystical, and it's not something that's like on the surface. You know, takes a little bit more digging to figure out what he's got going on. and it has something to do with the different religions and the different gods, and the blood of priest.
Yeah, I loved the Forsaken chapter. I thought it was excellent. I bet you did too.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites that George has ever written. The Forsaken is from the Winds of Winter. If some of you guys don't know, it's one of the chapters that's been released so far.
It's a fucking nightmare of a chapter.
It's definitely a nightmare because you have Euron who's torturing his brother, the damp hair.
and he, and he gets a bad case of Cthulhu face.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've discussed it on my channel, and I've also narrated the entire thing on my channel. If you don't like reading, like some people have told me,
Oh
they
man,
don't like
you
reading.
have
Yeah,
Quinn. You have such a good reading voice. I have to check that out. I didn't know you read the whole thing.
yeah, I read the entire chapter, The Forsaken. So let's
Nice.
get to, I guess, another question.
Yeah, let's take some. Yeah, there's one that was I told somebody I would answer it.
All right.
Let's see here. Oh, it was about the temple where the White Walker was converted. Are we ever going to see it again? Do they just drop that? Are we gonna? What do you think about that?
That temple. I don't know if we're ever gonna see it. We might see it in a flashback. I don't think the White Walkers are going back there. I think right now, from this point on, the others are going to be marching south. If we do see that again, it's going to be in a brand vision or brand showing it to someone else and explaining something. But it's a possibility. So, what about you? Do you think we'll see it again?
I think it's pretty cool. I don't see why they wouldn't use it again somehow. But the thing about that place is that um, they can really only use it for like a magical principle. Like you don't show the White Walkers hanging around planning their invasion. That takes away the creepy factor.
Yeah.
So the only reason they used it was to convert that baby. And they just changed the ice dragon right there on the spot. So you
Yeah.
have to think about like what purposes will the show have for showing us the others again before the final battle.
Mm-hmm.
You never know. The final battle could certainly end up. It seems like the Weirwood Circle, the obelisks, and around, the place where the others were created is now like the most important place. But
Yes.
we don't really know how far that is from that ice
We have no idea
sort
where
of.
that is.
I mean, it might be like right on the other side of the hill. So
Yeah. Um.
it's like a 50-50, I'd say.
Yeah. It's definitely. See, that's one scene that I do like from the show that's not really in the books. Well, not yet. Is that it does show you a little bit of the culture of the White Walkers, because that it was a very ceremonial thing. They're putting a baby on an altar, and all of the other ones are standing behind watching him. So it's some kind of ceremony, and that shows you right there that they're not just mindless killing machines that are just killing for no reason. That was a special moment. You know, the converting of that baby into another.
Yeah, that was I liked it too. It was basically consistent with what the books was implying, so I thought it was cool.
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, because you've got we talked about this last time, I think, but we got Craster, and you don't really know what he's doing to the babies. You don't really know what the others are doing with the babies. You get the idea. People think that the others eat babies or something like that. I don't think they eat babies. Obviously, they're using these babies for a very specific purpose. An interesting question would be, what do the others eat? Do they eat at all? Do they feed on the cold? Well, Melisandre doesn't eat. She's sustained by the fire, so I don't see why something like the White Walkers couldn't be sustained by the cold as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to note that Melisandre is animated by fire uh, in some sense, or she's transforming into someone that can be sustained by her fire magic.
Hmm.
And that gives her a certain amount of immunity to the cold. When she was outside in a Dance with Dragons at the wall with John, I mean, it's noted several times. She doesn't need a coat. She gives off warmth when you stand near her, and like it's John even comments like, "Oh, you need some gloves," and she's like, "Nope, R'hllor has touched my heart. I don't need that." And
She's
so
constantly warm.
yeah,
There's,
so when we talk about John going in the water and not dying, um, then it's possible that there is an immunity to cold with people that are animated by fire magic.
Mm-hmm. I guess, I guess, yeah, because we do establish early on, because like even in the show, like John touches Melisandre's face, and he can feel the warmth on her. So we established that earlier, I guess. So I guess that could kind of explain why Jon Snow isn't dying. Being in freezing water, and like,
It would just be nice if they addressed it. Like they just haven't addressed Jon Snow's status at all. We don't know if he still gets boners or can make people pregnant, has flowing blood or not. We don't know any of that. Like, and we don't know if most people think of him as being resurrected.
yeah. Yeah, because yeah, you have to
Besides,
yeah, you have to ask the question like, why isn't the North being he is a deserter of the Night's Watch? You know?
exactly.
Yeah.
The only thing that got him out of his vows was being killed
Mm-hmm.
and resurrected. So they
Yeah.
either have to all think of him as having been resurrected or as a Night's Watch deserter. It's possible that they're just like, well, he came to the defense of the North,
Mm-hmm.
and that was like, okay, that's okay with everybody or something. But that's not consistent with the Night's Watch rules at all.
Yeah, I mean, and that's been so ingrained in the minds of the Northerners for so long that deserters are put to death. You think Ned Stark wants to put that guy to death in season one? No, he doesn't want to. It's his duty.
No.
It's his duty.
So no, no, guys, I haven't read any leaked scripts, and we're obviously not talking about them. And we'll thank you for kindly doing the same.
Yes. We're not going to be discussing the leaks. Why didn't they use fire magic on their swords to keep warm and prevent Thoros from freezing to death? Well, I got more the impression that Thoros died from his wounds rather than freezing to death. What do you think about that, LML?
I Yeah, I mean, it could have been one or the other or both. I did wonder that same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why didn't they just keep their swords burning to like keep them all warm?
Yeah, that would have made more sense. Yeah.
So let me ask you, Quinn. I was pretty critical of the episode too. I pretty much agreed 100% with your original review. And although we're not going to spend a ton of time, beating the dead horse or whatever,
Yeah.
let me ask you this much. I mean, it's pretty obvious that Night King could have attacked the people on the island if he wanted to. He could have thrown spears at John with his awesome aim that he
Yeah.
has. He could have. I'm pretty sure he could have just touched the lake and frozen it and sent everybody over.
Mm-hmm.
Or the White Walkers could have just walked across the ice one at a time without the whites. So the fact now, maybe that's just convenient writing or whatever, obviously. But the question I'm posing is it possible that the show is intending to communicate to us the idea that the Night King was setting a trap for the dragons, or that he didn't want to kill Jon yet for some reason? Do you think there's something like that going on?
I think if they wanted to do that, then why does it seem like they don't attack until the Hound throws the rock? Like,
Yeah, that's the problem with that, isn't it?
yeah, I'm like the Hound throws a rock, and then it's like they're saying, "Oh, now we can walk across." But like, why not until that specific moment? I mean, that is what doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Among
Yeah,
other
the rock.
things.
Yeah, totally.
But
It seemed like that part was written just for like the giggle of it or something,
Mhm. and
but it didn't really make much sense.
and then it, and like you said, there's so many ways they could have gotten across. I'm like they could have jumped. I'm like, why not jump? Like use the bodies of other whites to make like a bridge. Or it's like I mean, they're like, we've already established that they behave like they can at times behave as like almost a hive mind. Like in the last season when they attack the cave, they're like ants crawling over that tree. They're throwing themselves off cliffs in Hardhome. And then
Right.
getting right back up. So I'm just like, they can clearly act as like one entity. So I mean, there's so much they could have done. So I get why people want to say that, he set it up. But I don't know if that's actually the case. I really don't.
It's because I guess the deeper thing I'm getting at is, what is the Night King? I mean, he seems definitely somebody that's smart and capable of planning things.
Yes.
And I think the others in the books definitely show the same signs of having strategy and tactics and logic and things like that. So it just gets around to like, what is the Night King's game? You know. See,
Yes.
I don't like the idea of a dragon melting the wall at all. I just don't think that's where it's going. I think we're going to need something bigger. And we also have the parallel question of not just what's going to bring the wall down, but we got to remember we need to hide the sun.
Yes.
The others can't invade until the sun is hidden and there's no more daytime.
Uh-huh.
So when you ask the question of what's going to bring the wall down, you probably have to ask simultaneously what's going to block the sun.
Uh-huh. Well,
People in the chat, what do you think?
yeah.
What's going to block the sun, guys?
Well, you would assume that it would be the moon, right? You know, in the United States, we just had the other day we just had, you know, the first eclipse, full eclipse in 99 years. You know, where I lived, I didn't really get to see it that well. But where some people lived, you know, they saw, some people were in the area of like total coverage, where they saw like the full circle of the moon and, you know, barely like the outline of the sun on the outside. Here it got like mildly dark, got kind of purple.
Yeah,
But
I got like an 80% eclipse. So I got a
mhm,
nice like white crescent sun, and it was partially cloudy, so it actually looked really cool.
yeah.
Yeah, I got some good photos on that.
But the interesting thing is, whatever blocks out the sun, it's got to be something, you know, more permanent than kind of an eclipse. Yeah, we know because, you know, like old Nan says that, you know, the sun hides its face for years. You know, this was generations of darkness. So we're talking about something that could block out the sun for generations. And we all know
That's the thing.
LML's.
It's like,
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say
No, no, go ahead.
we all know your thing about the meteor shower. You know, that's totally something because like the debris and the air it totally blocks out the sun. I
Well,
mean,
that's what I think is going to happen in the books.
mm-hmm.
Get another meteor event. See the red comet coming back sometime in the next book, hopefully. In
Yeah.
the show likes to simplify things, so I suspect I'm hoping for just like a magical eclipse that somehow doesn't end. Or alternately, what would be funny is like imagine this next episode. All right, everybody's in the dragon pit and it's tense, and John's making his pitch about the White Walkers, and all of a sudden the eclipse starts, right? And they look up and the sun's darkening, and then it looks like this dark eye, and everyone's freaked out, and John starts yelling about the long night. The end is here. The long night has begun. I told you. And then all of a sudden the eclipse is over, and the sun comes back out, and everyone's like, "You dumbass."
That's interesting. That's funny.
But yeah, I've got an outside. So let me ask this question to you, Quinn. Whatever the cause, do you think we'll see the long night fall at the end of this episode? Either the wall or the long night or both. Do you think that's going to happen this episode or next season?
I think we will see. I think we got to save that for next season. Like I think the long night will begin next season. It might begin. Okay, either. Okay, god dang it.
It'd be a good way to end, right?
It would be a good way to end. It would be a good way to end to have the wall come down. I think, but I think when the actual darkness comes, it'll be next season. So I'm hoping that we get some, you know, some good horror moments, you know, in the dark forest, because I feel like that's something that the show's been kind of lacking. Because in the books, the White Walkers, they're scary. And in the show, I feel like they're not really scary. In the show, like they're kind of more of like an action moment. When they come around, it's kind of like it's time to fight. We're trying to get like some sword fights, but you don't really get that, you know, horror aspect, except maybe like in the beginning, in the very first episode of Game of Thrones. You know, you kind of get that scary scene in the
I
dark forest.
I thought the one that was attacking John at Hardhome was a little bit scary because when he started kicking John's ass all over the place, you sort of felt like, you know, oh shit, John's overmatched. Although
Hmm.
you kind of knew he was going to whip out the Valyrian steel. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. They're definitely creepier in the books. That might just be a case of like, you know, good writing, you know, and horror, and you can write it pretty creepy, you know. But
Yeah.
let me. I've got a good question here in the chat that I want to address. It's from Review Pre, and he says, or she, I'm not sure. I thought you would be the one to see the Isle of Faces cave slash island in the frozen lake parallels. We even had a flaming sword breathing or breaching the ice.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I definitely noticed those parallels. You probably did too, Quinn, right?
Uh-huh.
We have, of course, hopefully you guys all saw our joint episode a couple weeks ago about all the cave paintings and
Yes.
eclipses and all that stuff,
We talk
all the
about the Isle of
symbolism. And
Faces.
then, yeah, totally. And even if you hadn't seen that episode, you might just look at the island in the middle of the lake in the last episode and think of the Isle of Faces. And I
Yes.
definitely think that is intentional.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the interesting thing is that with my whole God's Eye theory, the idea is that the Isle of Faces correlates to the moon, and that makes the pupil, while the lake corresponds to the sun, and that's like the iris. And the thing is, from the moon comes the dragons, which are like flaming swords. So then, if you look on the island in the lake in last episode, what do we have on that island? Well, we had dragons and flaming swords, and Jon Snow and Daenerys, who are both like Azor Ahai reborn. So like right in the middle of the God's Eye, where they should be. So I was pretty tickled by all of that. I mean, it could be just happy coincidence, but
You
it
know,
lines up pretty well. So
a
yeah,
lot
I
of
saw it.
what's been going on in the show has pretty much kind of been confirming your theories recently. Because, a couple episodes you have that, shot of Jon Snow standing on Dragonstone with the moon floating right
Yeah, that
above
was
his head. It's like
totally.
directly above him. So, there's that seems like it's a thing. I mean, you can't it's kind of hard to argue, like more and more evidence is showing up in favor of it.
And there's the hypes Azor Hype made a video like 4 weeks ago where he caught something and didn't even appreciate how important it was. I just watched it a couple days ago and my eyes bugged out of my head. So there's a close up, one of the books that Sam is looking at in the Citadel a few weeks ago. On the cover, tell me if you saw this. On the cover is a picture of a corpse woman who looks like the Night's Queen for all intents and purposes. And she is standing on a fractured moon crescent, and behind her is the sun. So she's almost like eclipsing the sun, if you will. And she appears to have a sword through her chest, although that part is hard to make out. That's what Azora Hype thought it was.
Uh-huh.
I couldn't really tell if it was or not.
You'll have to
But
send me that image.
yeah, so yeah, I'll look it up. I'll see if I can pull it up here. But the implication is pretty clear. It's like a cracked moon and a dead woman eclipsing the sun. That's kind of Nissa Nissa talk, especially if there's a sword. But
Yeah.
she has like this. She looks kind of like the Night's King, but more feminine.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty fucking amazing to see that on there. And that's the same episode where he saw the eclipse chart on those pages there.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot going on, which makes me think that there's some parts of my theory that are right, and or that Dave and Dan are using parts of it. Like I said, I don't know how much
Okay,
they'll
so
use.
so
But
if they are going to the same place as George R. R. Martin, like they've been saying, then you would assume that there have to be things in there that George R. R. Martin has said, this has to be in here, for it to make sense. So maybe
so
this
yeah,
is one of those things.
yeah. So exactly, like I'm sure that George told them what caused the long night,
Yeah.
and I'm sure that George told them what's going to cause the new long night. I mean, that's pretty basic mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, if George told them it was a meteor event, then they either have to do that meteor event or they have to think of something totally different to cause the long night, which is a heavy lift in and of itself. So yeah, to your point, there you go.
Yeah. So I've got a question here, which is about George R. R. Martin and his writing. It says, "Do you think the books will get bad like the show due to everyone rushing George R. R. Martin on Winds of Winter?" Hey, look, George R. R. Martin isn't getting rushed by anybody. I mean, people are like, he's gonna write the book, as long as he's gonna take as much time as he wants to write it, because he's said before that he's a perfectionist. He said before that he will write, an entire page, and then look at it and realize that he hates it and delete the whole thing and start over. So, George R. R. Martin is a perfectionist. He's not going to rush himself, and what he writes will be what he wants to put out. So that's my answer to that question.
So I'm trying to find that video if I can in my spare time here while we do this. But
All right. Oh, let's.
I wasn't able to find the picture anywhere except for on his video.
Uh-huh. Okay. Would you ever consider doing a read along of all 5 books on the channel? Well, you see, the problem with that is I would totally get a copyright thing going on. So you can't when you're what I can do snippets from chapters and maybe even like a whole chapter here and there sometimes. But once I start doing, entire books, then the problem becomes that it's beginning to compete with, the audiobook market, and that's a problem for, whoever owns the rights to the A Song of Ice and Fire audiobooks, because I can't do that. I can't read a book and put it on YouTube. But what I will be doing after the season is over is that I will be doing epic rereads. I kind of did one before the season started, and I will continue those live after the series is over. Well, we'll be reading a chapter, stopping part ways through it and discussing what we've read. So you can look forward to that. Okay.
Okay, I found it. I
All right.
found the link. So what I'm going to share in the chat is a link that starts at the exact moment where it's got that picture up.
All right, and that will be
This,
posted there it is right there. It's been posted in the chat.
so take a look at it, Quinn. I don't know if you can while you're doing all this crap, but
I will see.
It's pretty cool.
Let's take a look at it.
It's definitely the sun behind her, and it's definitely a she, and it's definitely looks like the Night's King. And if you let the video play, it'll zoom in on the various parts of her and show it a little bit.
If you write
And then she's standing on top
ad.
of a fractured. Yeah, there's an ad, of course. And on top of like a broken moon crescent.
Okay.
So that's some pretty strong stuff right there. It's an eclipse, Nissa, Night's King, a cracked moon, all sort of put together.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see the sword. It's vertical. It's not at an angle. It's like coming down vertically through her chest.
Coming down vertically.
And then between her legs, like, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can kind of vaguely make out a sword going on there. I definitely see the moon with the crack in it, and the sun behind her, and there's stars in the background. She's definitely a corpse, and she's got a crown on, it looks like. So, corpse queen. Yeah. Very interesting image.
Yeah, totally interesting image.
And this is on the cover of a book, isn't it? And it looks like, what does it say on the cover? I don't know if that's English.
So it's something about the long night.
Uh-huh. Looks like that could be legend. I can't really make it out from it.
Yeah, Legends of the Long Night. I think that's what it was.
Oh, well, that's definitely the Night's Queen then. If that's the title of the book, yeah. Like, why would that not be in a book called Legends of the Long Night? Very, very interesting stuff here.
I see somebody asking what the fuck is wrong with his mic. Is my sound fucked up again?
It's periodic.
Man, killing me.
Yeah. So yeah, the book is called Legend of the Long Night, and this is a better image of it that's up now. And it looks like she's holding something in her hand as well. Now that I'm looking at this image, I don't know if I can really see the sword going
Yeah,
through
like I
her.
said, the part's kind of iffy.
Yeah, but definitely the sun in the background, like she's blocking the sun. She's standing on the cracked moon. I'm
Hey,
not.
Quinn, let me do this. Let me hang up and call you back just on my phone Skype. And
All
see
right.
if that. I'll turn off my laptop and get rid of the fan and see if that does it better.
All right, let's do that.
Cool.
LML will be back shortly, guys. In the meantime, I'll answer some more questions. Okay. More questions about logistics. Why do you watch the show when you clearly don't enjoy it anymore? Fair enough. Your opinion is not believable. Why not stick to the books? Oh, Ari Young. You crack me up. Do you think Bran is behind some sort of major plan? Well, Yeah, that's my answer to that is yeah. I think Bran is pulling the strings of a lot of stuff right now. I think that pretty much what he wants to happen is what is going to happen. Because as the Master of Fates, the person that, knows more than anyone else, he has that right. Hello.
All right, how's this?
That sounds great, actually.
Actually,
Yeah.
that's funny. I just cut out the fancy microphone, audio interface, expensive Apple computer, and just plug into my phone, and it works better.
Yeah. It actually sounds really good.
Okay, cool, man. Well, I just
Okay.
try and, like I said, the first time I came on, I left a speaker on in the background, and there was a little bit of echo in some parts. And the second time I came on, my sensitivity was really hot, and it was all like twice as loud as you.
Well,
And I listened back to it, and I was mad. And I just,
technology. How does it work? Okay, so I just answered a question, and I'm gonna throw it to you now. Do you think Bran is behind some sort of master plan?
oh, he's got to be behind some sort of master plan, or else what the fuck is he doing?
Uh-huh.
He's the all-knowing seer, and he's his. So, okay, I'm glad you asked this question. So, Bran, what we have to understand about Bran is that his motivations and values are now essentially the same as Bloodraven in the books,
Mm-hmm.
meaning he probably doesn't give a crap about any human grudges, and he really only cares about the Long Night
Yeah.
and possibly about serving the weirwoods and, not letting man destroy them or something, because that's
Yeah.
kind of part and parcel with the children. But the point is that when people talk about Littlefinger, like a couple episodes when Bran came back, I was the first thing I said was, "Oh, Littlefinger's toast. Bran's going to know that he betrayed Ned, and then Littlefinger's going to be toast." But Bran didn't expose him. He gave him that one line about chaos is a ladder, just to like let Peter know that he was onto him a little bit. But he hasn't blurted out to Sansa and Arya that Peter betrayed Ned, because if he had, Arya would have killed him,
Mm-hmm.
and Sansa probably would have taken some action. So that means that I think that is all intentional. That's not bad writing.
He's
That
o-
is telling us.
yeah.
I was sorry. Just real quick, I was just going to say that tells us that Bran has a plan, and he's probably planning to use Peter to further whatever his plans are, because he doesn't care about those grudges anymore. If he can use Peter in a way that helps prepare humankind for the long night, then he will let him live in order to use him.
Yeah.
Does that
I
make sense?
agree. Yeah, I agree. He's doing what is necessary. He's doing what matters. And that may not make sense to, people that, can't see the future or that don't have as much, context as he does. But it makes perfect sense to him. He doesn't care about the fact that, Jamie Lannister pushed him out of a window. He doesn't care about any of that. All he cares about
Exactly.
is getting is, I'm not exactly sure 100% what Bloodraven's plan was, but what he cares about is that plan. He's gonna, achieve that by what he feels to be necessary means. You know.
And this is a thing where I think both of us kind of like what the show is doing with Bran in general.
Yeah.
When a lot of people were confused why Bran was so out of touch, I think both of us were sort of saying the same thing. Like, no, that's pretty right. Like, if you are weighed down with that level of cosmic burden, the fate of humanity, and you can see in different times and different realities at once, like, you become detached. And just what I was saying about Bran's values now, he doesn't care about, the petty grievances that the person who used to be Bran used to have.
Yeah.
And so there's good and bad to this. So first, the show is showing us the downside, which is he doesn't barely know his family or care about his family. But at the same time, we're going to see the good side too. And this is consistent with what George Martin does. When he gives somebody a power, a magical power or something, he associates a heavy cost with it. We all know that. And in fact, I think Martin likes to write about the cost of magic more than doing magic himself. So
Yeah.
that's what they're doing with Bran,
Mm-hmm.
and they're doing it well, I think.
Yeah, I think it's done pretty good. I mean, the only thing is that I wish there was more with Bray in the show. Like they've been using him. He's not been around very much this season.
Yeah, it's a little bit. It's a little bit like they're almost afraid
like it's a touchy thing when you have a guy that can see into the future and the
Hmm.
past,
It's not an
and
easy
so it's
thing to
almost
write. So,
somebody's asking who's talking. They just got on. My name is Lucifer, means light bringer,
and I am
and
Ideas of Ice and Fire. You're on my channel.
yes, there you are. And we're talking about stuff.
Yeah.
We're talking about ice dragons, and in fact, that's some of the stuff that I had prepared was about not just ice dragons, but the nature of ice. We were talking about whether or not the dragon's going to breathe cold or breathe, blue fire that's hot. And I'd already said that I think it should breathe something cold, whether it's a cold fire or a cold mist. But this really gets back to the whole idea of what ice magic is like in A Song of Ice and Fire. And I think the books give a lot of good language, which enlightens. And so, in the very prologue of A Game of Thrones, and if you've taken any sort of English or literary classes, everyone tells you like the first chapter, the first scene of a book, it's supposed to set the stage for the rest. It's supposed to give you the themes, it's supposed
Hmm.
to foreshadow things. And so in the prologue, we have this speech about frostbite. And listen to this. This is from Garrett. It was the cold, Garrett said with iron certainty. I saw men freeze last winter, the one before, when I was half a boy. Everyone talks about snows 40 foot deep, and how the ice wind comes howling out of the north. But the real enemy is the cold. It steals up on you quieter than will, and at first you shiver and your teeth chatter and you stamp your feet and dream of mulled wine and nice hot fires. It burns, it does. Nothing burns like the cold, but only for a while. Then it gets inside you and starts to fill you up, and after a while you don't have the strength to fight it. It's easier just to sit down or to go to sleep. They say you don't feel any pain towards the end. First you go weak and drowsy and everything starts to fade, then it's like sinking into a sea of warm milk, peaceful like. And then it says, such eloquence, Garrett, Sir Waymore observed. I never suspected you had it in you. And then he says, I've had the cold inside me, lordling. And so there's
Hmm.
this language is important. Having the cold inside you, which is said twice here, this is the opposite of having the fire inside you. And that's a key phrase that's used for Melisandre and Daenerys. When
Yeah.
Dany hatches for dragon's eggs and walks into the pyre, she had the fire inside her. And
Hmm.
then when we get the POV of Melisandre having her fire vision, it says the fire was inside her, transforming her and searing
Yeah.
her.
Yeah.
So I think Martin's hinting at an opposite process of cold, but the key line here is nothing burns like the cold, because the other descriptions of the others also use the word burn. They say their eyes burn like blue stars, but like cold blue stars. So we got this idea of burning cold. And then there's another quote I'll pull up. So give me your reaction to that, and I'll pull up a couple other ones here.
I think that's a very interesting quote. Um, yeah. I never, I must have just like completely looked over that when I read the prologue. Well, all the times that I've read the prologue, because you do get that with Melisandre when she's, in her chambers in A Dance with Dragons, and you get that with Daenerys later on. Not, yeah, later on in the Game of Thrones. It's a very interesting parallel, I think. Very interesting language. George R. R. Martin definitely is very symbolic with the language. Um,
And then, of course, in that chapter, what do we see? We see people get the cold inside them. We
yeah.
see Waymar get it in white, and we
Hmm.
see the others
Yeah.
who are seemed like transformed humans in some sense because they have bones and blood and speech and they ride horses and all that crap.
Hmm.
So we've seen two different versions of people being transformed through ice magic, White Walkers and whites in this chapter where they're talking about getting the cold inside you and stuff. So yeah, that's what I think is going on.
So
But
to,
there is,
no,
go ahead.
I was gonna say I'm gonna indulge my vanity a little bit. Lola Dixie said, she says your channel made the British news this week. Are you talking about my channel or Lucifer's channel? And if so, then I'd love a link.
Yeah, who made the news? Come on.
Yeah, I would love a link to that.
Quit playing games with our hearts.
I mean, for real though. And speaking of that, there we've got almost 900 people watching. So feel free to leave a like if you're enjoying the conversation, and yeah. So leave a like.
Okay, so what we're really talking about here is yin and yang. And everybody's familiar with what a yin yang looks like. And the thing to focus on is that white side, the yang, it has a black dot in the middle. And the yin side, the black side, has a white dot in the middle. And there's a philosophical reason for that, which is that basically everything contains a little bit of its opposite. There really is no such thing as purity. Like nobody's purely good or purely evil. And you can see how that vibes very well with what Martin talks about in terms of good and evil in his story. And so what I'm seeing is that even though ice magic is cold, there's an aspect of it that burns. And you could see it in those quotes. Nothing burns like the cold. That phrase is used several times in the books. Nothing burns like the cold. And we see the others, and they're cold, but they have stars for eyes. And stars, even blue stars, of course, aren't cold. They're hot. In fact, blue stars are much hotter than yellow and red stars. In the same way that blue flame is actually the purest kind of flame, because the color of a flame is determined on its fuel source. So we've got these ice demons, but their eyes burn, but that burns cold. So essentially what George is doing is he's making ice magic more fun and more interesting. It's making it active like fire.
Mm-hmm.
It burns like fire, but it's cold. And on the flip side, we have frozen fire, which is the same idea. It's bringing an element of cold to the side of fire.
Mm-hmm.
When you freeze fire, it turns into obsidian. And isn't it interesting that obsidian seems to be a more effective weapon against the others than actual fire? Because the others can walk through fire. Even the dragon fire shrank in front of them in the last episode. So it's weird. It's like if you want a weapon of fire to fight the others, but if that weapon of fire is tempered by a little bit of cold, if it's frozen fire, then it's like more balanced or more effective or something. I don't know. What do you think of that?
I mean, isn't that what it's all about? You know, the combination of the two. You talk about a song of ice and fire. You know, what is a song? I think a song is kind of like a joining, a harmony of two things. Yeah, a harmony is a better word. It's like a harmony of two things. So, you know.
And that's what yin yang is all about, the balance of opposite forces.
Mm-hmm.
And so when George says a song of ice and fire, that's a Taoist, and Taoism is the word for yin yang philosophy essentially.
Mm-hmm.
That's a Taoist statement to say a song of ice and fire because it's a harmony of these opposite forces.
Yes.
And so basically what I'm trying to say simply is that you can get to a mix of ice and fire from either side. You can start with ice magic but make it burn, and that's like an ice and fire harmony. But on the side of fire, you can freeze fire and get frozen fire, dragon glass, and that is an ice and fire weapon. And then, so check this out. The first most important weapon that we see in the story is Ned's ice. And what is that? It's a black dragon sword called ice.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's very much an ice and fire harmony symbol.
Yeah.
So here is Jojen in A Storm of Swords talking to Bran. And Mira says that she kind of hates the mountains, but kind of loves them also. And Bran's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. And so Mira says, well, why? And Bran says, because they're different, like night and day. Hate and love are different, he's saying. Like night and day, or like ice and fire. And Jojen says, if ice can burn, then love and hate can mate.
Oh, wow.
So it's very clear, like the idea of love and hate mating, that is Taoism. That is the yin yang. And he's comparing that to burning ice. So that's kind of what I'm saying. Like the idea of burning ice or frozen fire is just George yin yang idea and injecting it into his magic schema, if you will. Because we know he doesn't have rules, quote. He doesn't like magic systems, quote unquote.
Yeah.
But he does have basic principles, tendencies, like only death can pay for life. It's kind of a truism, if you will, a principle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. And it's also a really interesting paradox. You know, Frank Herbert talks about paradoxes in Dune and how they're really essential, to the universe. And that kind of goes into that whole yin and yang thing, opposites thing. Opposites really being the same, down at the core of the very things. I mean, if you want to get, like super scientific, we're all made of the same exact thing. We're all
Okay,
made,
Quinn,
yeah.
I would just say we're getting a bunch of crying in the chat here about
About
not
what?
answering questions. Not
Okay,
answering questions.
okay,
Should we go back, harvest some?
we will get some questions. So yeah, throw some questions in the chat, guys. In the meantime, I'll answer one of the questions from uh from my YouTube thing.
Yeah. So the complaint is we're only answering questions from 3 days ago, and this sucks because of that.
Okay. We'll put some questions in the chat, guys. Put some
We're
questions in
doing
the
our
chat,
best.
and
Quinn's
then
gonna answer one,
yeah,
and I'll come through here and see if I can find
mm-hmm,
some.
yes. Hi, ideas. I did the math on everything, including the rate of freezing water. Turns out the timeline is not terrible, albeit it's rough. This is what I found. That's not a question. Can't read all that. That's like a whole dissertation, almost.
Do you think Littlefinger's story will end any other way than him being murdered? No, I don't.
I think
Right?
next episode he's gone. He's gone next episode, and I've said that. I've said he was gonna die this season since last season ended. Thanks for the super chat, Reiki practitioners or Reiki.
That's right.
So
Remember, that's always a good way to get your question answered quickly and promptly is super chat to
yeah,
Quinn.
super chat. So your question
Let's
will
see
definitely
here.
stand out.
Did the Night King set a trap? We actually talked about that earlier.
Yeah, we
I think
did
it's
talk about that earlier.
possible. Quinn was more skeptical. We'll
I'm
have to see.
I'm skeptical because I just don't trust the showmakers to just be that. I mean,
No, yeah, you can't. You
yeah.
can't trust them. That's why it's such a crapshoot. We just have to guess.
And
I'd like to think so. It's more believable than the idea that Arya and Sansa are playing Littlefinger, which I don't think makes much sense.
do you think that
That's-
Cersei's plot will end before the last episode of season 8? I think that it will, but I also kind of hope that Cersei outlives everyone and survives and is still queen after it's all over. I feel like
Can
that would
White
be super
Walkers?
interesting.
Sorry, apologies. Can White Walkers get hurt from wildfire? That is a good question. I think wildfire would certainly kick ass against the whites. That's for
Yeah.
sure. They need to get some of it up there for that. Hard to say. We don't know. Like the White Walkers seem to be able to make the flame tamp down. And in the children's book, the Ice Dragon, when the ice dragon, when it breathes, it's cold, frosty mist. It sort of puts out fires. Fires like wither and die.
Well, the interesting
So
thing about wildfire though is that it's a chemical. So you've got it's not just fire, it's this chemical that's burning.
yeah,
It's got it's got it's
and
got it's got different properties than regular fire. It's very high. It's only second to dragon fire. So yeah, I think this would be a really useful tool against the White Walkers, and they got to use it again. Cersei's got the pyromancers. Got to bring it up again one last time against the others.
do White Walkers ever have to poop? Everybody poops. That's a children's book. So
I'm
I would
pretty
assume
sure their
so.
poop is ice.
Snowballs,
It's snow.
or maybe they poop chains.
That's where they came from. Now it makes perfect sense.
What do you think would be the most satisfying answer to what the others want in the books?
I think they want. I think they want what's rightfully theirs. I think the pack is see that's my thing. There was a pact that was. I keep saying this. I say this in like every stream, but there was a pact that was breached, and that's why they're returning. They're returning to conquer. You know, humanity didn't
Yeah,
keep up its part of the bargain. Now they're returning, and I think it's as
yeah,
simple as that.
right. They were wronged. They're looking for revenge
Yeah.
or to take back what was theirs in some way, something like that. Is
hmm
Cersei really pregnant? I think so, probably, but maybe not. Who knows?
I
What do you
think
think,
I
Quinn?
think she's pregnant. I got a super chat from Philip of House Harris. What would need to happen in the final to feel like this season was a success? God, that's a difficult question. Oh, so much.
I really think.
I don't know what could make this. I don't know if I could, if anything could happen that could make me be like, this season was a success, because I feel like the low points were just too low for me to be like, this
So
season was a success.
I have an interesting take on this, which is, or hopefully it's interesting, which is just that I look at every episode and every scene independently. Like I've given up on the idea of continuity, and I'm such a book reader over a show watcher that I'm basically watching the show, hoping for those occasional moments when they get something from the books and bring it to life, even if it's not canon. Like Hard Home, for example, it wasn't canon, but it brought the terror of a white attack to life, and so I loved that episode. And that's what I watched the show for. So the last episode might have made no sense, but the next episode might be fantastic. And if the last episode sucks, the next one being good, like I feel like it's not even an indication. It varies so much. There's been 2 or 3 episodes and certain scenes from this season that I thought were great, and there were some that I thought were terrible. And I feel like scene by scene it varies. And so when you try to evaluate it on an overall scale, it's kind of tricky. But like I said, they might have a great episode. And what do they need to do in order to redeem themselves? Well, they just need to make a good episode. It needs to be written well. It should have good dialogue, and whatever happens, it needs to make sense. And that way, we know it's going to have spectacle, but is the spectacle meaningful? That's the question. Will they deliver it in a way that it is meaningful? Because here's the thing. The reason why Quinn and I and other people are bitching about these mistakes and problems is not because we like to bitch about stuff. It's because they're distracting. You're watching the episode and you're trying to get into it and you're enjoying it. And then you're like, wait, that doesn't make fucking sense. And it pulls you out of the episode. And when that happens like 6 times in an episode, at the end of it, you're just like, wow, that was really hard to enjoy, even though it should have been awesome.
Eventually,
and that's the whole thing. Go ahead.
Eventually, it becomes impossible to suspend your disbelief. There's too much. It's like you said. It's extremely distracting. I've got a couple super chats. One person said, "Have I read the season 8 leaks?" And I have not. And we're not going to be talking about leaks but thanks for your super chat. And then another person said, Gandhi Skywalker said, about yin yang theory. I did not hear all you said, but I think it is spot on. Also, remember George Martin also wrote about Yeti and all that lore, similar to the Westeros lore in many ways. Well, that's more to you, David. I mean...
Yeah, and the what's cool is everybody knows, like, in the World of Ice and Fire, they talk about Azor Ahai, and they give you 5 different names. Herkun the Hero, Eldrick Shadow Chaser, Nefarion, Yin-Tar, and Azor Ahai. Now, Yin-Tar would obviously be the Yitish version, because their capital city is Yin. Now, the thing is, Yin is the black side of the yin-yang. So the name Yin-Tar really means black tar, and tar is black. So really, it's very consistent. And it's also consistent with the idea that Azor Ahai is a bad guy, the Bloodstone Emperor, according to my theory. He's the guy that caused the Long Night. He may have had something to do with ending it also, in a sort of like, you caused it, so you got to fix it kind of thing. But my theory is that he caused it. So the very act of naming one of Azor Ahai's names, Yin-Tar, to me is a clue about him being a black sorcerer, the Bloodstone Emperor with his black stone, black sword that's like Valyrian steel, like we were talking about. So there you go. It's mentioned. Yes.
Yeah.
Yin. Now, there's a question that somebody's asked a bunch of times. I answered it in the chat, but that apparently wasn't good enough. So the question is, did Jon really bend the knee? They talked about it, but he doesn't literally say it, and she hasn't accepted it either. So, I mean, for all intents and purposes, yes. Like, when Jon was refusing to bend the knee, he was saying, no, I won't bend the knee. And so once he says, yes, I'll bend the knee, it doesn't matter if he bent it or not.
Yeah.
Jon's not one to go back on his word. Like, once he says, I bend the knee, that means that he's done the calculations.
She has
dragons.
He called her his queen, so yeah, he bent the knee. But okay, so EJ
I was thinking about
EJ Lionheart says, "Fuck you too, Ideas of Ice and Fire." I'm sorry, I just can't talk about the leaks. I mean, I'm sorry. So we can't talk about the leaks because there are people here that haven't seen them. So that's why I couldn't answer your question. But continue.
So what I was thinking about, what is Jon going to say to the North about bending the knee? Well, it's really fucking simple. Torrhen Stark bent the knee to Aegon simply because Aegon had dragons, and he saw that humans' forces cannot resist dragons without taking huge losses.
Yeah.
He saw that he could not stand against the Targaryens, and so he saved the lives of his people
By bending the knee.
And he also saw that Aegon was just to the people who bent the knee to him. And so he made a smart decision. Now, Jon went and saw the dragons and didn't bend the knee right away. So already he's shown more balls, if you will, or more stubbornness than Torrhen Stark. But then Dany went and proved her character and her commitment by going and rescuing him and risking her dragons north of the wall. And so that makes perfect sense for Jon to say, okay, this makes sense for me to submit to you and for us to unite behind you as the ruler, because you have the dragons and you have character that I can have confidence in. So I think that's an easy speech for Jon to make.
Yeah. Reiki practitioners, you said I missed your super chat, but I'm pretty sure that I did see it and read it unless you wrote another one. Just tell me what you said again and I'll be on the lookout for it.
Somebody asked if we'll see the RLJ flashback. I would certainly think so and hope so. And I would have to think that the Dragon and the Wolf title is an allusion to that, right?
It seems like that's where we're headed. I mean, even in the last episode, they've been setting it up. We've got, Beric telling Jon that he doesn't look anything like his dad. So they're again like igniting questions about who Jon Snow's mother is for the show watchers that might not know. I don't think most of them know. I don't even think most of them get it after the scene from last season. But, I think in this episode, it'll be a lot clearer. So I think we are getting that flashback.
So the main thing that they've been doing is basically avoiding. They don't want Jon and Dany to know because they need to let them develop a romance before they find out they're related, so it won't be quite so creepy. Because if Jon knew he was related at first, it would affect it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. The only chance Jon has of going along with it is if they fall in love first, and then Jon finds out.
Yeah.
But so that's why I think it makes sense to do an RLJ reveal in a Bran flashback, because it's like, well, Jon doesn't know yet, but the viewer can know, so they can still play with the Jon and Dany thing without them knowing. But
I think that's the best way for it to make sense, and they shouldn't react negatively when they find out they're related, because, like I said, the Targaryens been doing this for how long? For hundreds and hundreds of years. It's been going on for a while. So
yeah, it's kind of a series of shocks for Jon. It's like, oh, guess what? You're a Targaryen.
Yeah, Ned's not your dad.
And oh, by the way, the person you're in love with is related to you, but it's also okay because you're a Targaryen. It's like Jon sounds like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
It'll be fun to see how both the show and the books handle that.
It's gonna be
Jon finding out.
It's gonna be quite a mind fuck for Jon, no doubt. He's probably gonna be huddled in a corner in fetal position, like, who am I? What am I? His whole reality is gonna be shaken. But we'll see how it works. We'll see what they do.
Yeah, and let me just say that I kind of like the Dany and Jon chemistry on the show. I think it's pretty good. A lot of people don't, but I do.
I don't know if it's definitely not as bad as it could be. I will say that. It's not awful. It doesn't make me barf like I thought it might, because I feel they could have made it so much worse. Honestly, they could have made it way worse, and I feel like the way they're doing it it's tolerable. It's tolerable. That's what I'll say. I'll say it's tolerable.
Okay, so let me throw out something else. We were talking about the lake and how the lake parallels the Isle of Faces potentially and the God's Eye symbol. So check this out. Viserion is a white dragon, and he goes through the ice of the lake and then comes out resurrected. Mm-hmm. Okay. Jon is a dragon person named Snow. So even though he wears black, his name implies white. Mm-hmm. And he's a dragon. And he also went through the ice and came back out.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if they're intending to create that parallel, but it's pretty interesting that they created that parallel. Hey, Quinn, there's this one guy that keeps asking the same question over and over and over and over and over. Can I ban him?
What's the question? What is he saying?
I'm kind of kidding, but it's a little obnoxious. Like, we answered his question, and now he's asking a slightly different version of the same question that doesn't make any sense, and he just keeps repeating it, and it's a little annoying.
I'll just ignore him. But I
Go,
want to answer a Wiki practitioner's question. She
go for
said,
it.
"I am not buying this stupid Sansa and Arya fight because Bran should have been able to clear this up with ease." Hashtag dumb. Well, see, I'm not buying the fight, but the thing about Bran clearing it up is, see, Bran's only going to do what he wants to do. You know what I'm saying? He's only going to do what's necessary to complete his goals. So I don't know if he necessarily even cares about the Arya Sansa fight if it doesn't affect what he has, what he needs to accomplish. But about the fight being stupid, you're right. It's really, really, really stupid. And, for Arya to call Sansa a traitor when she served for Tywin Lannister and could have said any three names in the entire world and ended the war, and she didn't. If that's not a betrayal, I mean, I don't know what is. I mean, that's to me, that's bigger than anything Sansa did. Arya had the power to end the entire war. What excuse does she have? I'm a child. Well, Sansa has that exact same excuse. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. The Sansa-Arya conflict is dumb, but the idea of Bran not resolving it is easy to explain, which is that Bran is allowing events to take their course that they need to take for some greater purpose. So everything Bran does can be explained by that. However, that's not the answer. Could also be bad writing for anything too.
Yeah,
So
I mean, we
we really
know.
don't know, but you guys. Grudges or any of that. Like, he only cares about the end game, and he's more than happy to manipulate people however he needs to do it. So we've got super chat for Sam Gilly. Is anyone else insulted at Jon bending the knee? I really don't see why anyone would be. The point of bending the knee is that you don't have dragons, and the other person does. And fighting against dragons is basically just serving up your people to be slaughtered. And then you add on that Dany put her dragons and her own life on the line to go rescue Jon and fight the White Walkers, and is now committed to fighting the White Walkers. It makes 100% sense that she would bend the knee, and I don't see why, or that he would bend the knee, and I don't see why anyone would have a problem with that, personally. That's my take.
And thank you, Michael Williams, for your super chat. And as far as me being insulted by Jon bending the knee, I'm not insulted, but I did think the scene was a little bit strange because, like, Daenerys says beforehand that they're going to fight the Night King together, and then he bends the knee. I mean, she to me, that was kind of like her already saying, you don't have to bend the knee because I already see the threat and I'll fight them anyways. But at the end of the day, I don't think Jon Snow really wants to be King of the North, so I think that's why I bent the knee. And also, he is pretty much in love with Daenerys, and he kind of wants to get with her. And so, he's trying to win favor by saying I bend the knee. I mean, even though it's probably going to piss off the Northerners, but then, they'll get over it.
And I sort of lost my thread there when I was talking about Jon and Viserion being paralleled, but somebody commented, yes, Jon is also resurrected just like Viserion. And if you think about Jon's symbolism of having a half Stark heritage, specifically from Lyanna, whose major symbol is the blue winter rose, and then on his other side, he's got this dragon heritage from Rhaegar. You could call Jon an ice dragon himself. He's a frozen dragon. He's an icy version of a dragon person. He's up in the north. He's named Snow. His mother was the maiden of the winter rose. So there's very strong parallel, I think, behind this. Viserion, the white icy dragon, and Jon Snow, the ice dragon. And I hope that was intentional.
I mean, I agree. It seems like it's all over the place. You've got a Targaryen, Snow, in the north, all about ice. Ice dragon. I see that.
Yep, I see that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Brad Schoenfeld asks, are they drawing out RLJ a little too long? That's what I was just saying, is they need to draw it out a while so that Jon and Dany can have a romance without it complicating things. And then they can have the reveal and have them already have feelings for each other and then have to sort it out. That's how the TV drama goes. So it's drawn out, but yes, it does feel sort of drawn out, but that's why they're doing it. And I expect it'll feel a little better if we get some Rhaegar and Lyanna action next episode. Or if Howland Reed marches into the dragon pit and tells everyone what's up at the conclusion of the next episode, and like, well, actually, John's king.
Okay. Okay, Lucifer, this is interesting. Do you, like someone says it is explicitly revealed in the show that the Night King is a green seer when he can see Bran when he visits the army in his vision. Um,
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Either he's a green seer or he's a transformed green seer who can still access, the weirwood net because he appears inside of Bran's weirwood vision, and it also seems like he kicks Bran out of the Ravens in a couple
yeah,
episodes ago, right?
yeah. So yeah, that's definitely part of his power. See, like in the books, I'm more convinced that it was the children used themselves, that it was children that turned into the others. I don't think that it was men initially. I think later on that it's Craster's children as substitutes for the children that would have gotten converted. But I think initially it was the children of the forest that were transformed. And maybe one of them was a green seer, and maybe that's the figure that's, you know, kind of like the
So
Night's
here,
King.
so check this out, Quinn. Here's a good point of discussion for you. I was on the Hypes Watch last week, and we talked about this. We were talking about, how can the others be more complex? What's a satisfying origin story other than they're pissed off over something?
Hmm.
And so we got to the idea of, well, who is that guy that got tied to that weirwood tree and transformed into the Night King? And we're talking show canon here, obviously. Who was that guy? We were just talking about, well, he might have been a green seer, or he might have become he might have gained the ability to access the Weirwood Net when he was transformed. But the question basically is who was that guy? Was he just some dude? Or was he somebody important? Was he somebody that did something? Was that Azor Ahai? Was Azor Ahai's child or brother? Or, that's where what we could find out. That's something the story could tell us, the show could tell us is, what is that guy's story? Who was he before that moment where he was tied to that tree? So what do you think about that?
Oh, that's so interesting. You know what's interesting about that moment in the show is that judging by the way the children of the forest were behaving, they didn't really know what was going to happen when they did what they did. You know, she sticks the dragon glass dagger in his heart and she kind of looks up at him and she like she's trying to see what's going to happen, and she looks they all look kind of frightened and amazed. So who is this guy? I've heard people say that he's a Stark. I don't know if there's really any actual evidence to support this. But since I do believe that he was a green seer beforehand, I think that that kind of goes with the idea that he's a Stark, because we do kind of have the indication that the children of the forest bred with men, and specifically the Starks, and that's why the Starks kind of have green seer blood in their veins. So he's got to be someone that has, the children of the forest's blood, because I don't think that you can just teach someone to be a green seer. You have to be born that way. And since we know that came from the children of the forest, it only makes sense that people have that ability because they have the blood of the children of the forest. So I think that he's someone that had the right blood that they stole to create this thing to stop mankind. I don't know if he was necessarily an important figure in his community or anything like that, but I think his blood is what makes him important.
Yeah, I would tend to think that if the show is smart, dun dun dun, cough cough.
If
If the show is smart, then they will explore that because that would be fascinating to find out anything else about that guy.
hmm
Not is Stark, but what did he do? Did he deserve to be tied up to that tree? Did they just capture some random human? Was he like, I mean, that's a really interesting story that they could show us with a
hmm
flashback. So
yeah,
let's hope they tell us.
I got a
And oh,
super
there's a big
chat.
stuff. Yeah, big one.
Yeah. In Bran's vision of the making of the Night King, and this is asked by Norse G. Sorry,
Norskell.
Norskill G. All right. In Bran's vision of the making of the Night King, the area is super green and sunny. Was the land beyond the wall livable before the making of the Night King? Yes, I think so. I think the Night King was made, or whoever this guy was made, and that unleashed the winds of winter. and it spread from that point, and it got out of control, and that's why eventually the children had to team up with men to stop them. But I guess that area, since that was where it started, it just stayed frozen, you know. So that's
So
my take on that.
it could be that George is having fun with sort of a kooky Atlantis theory called Earth crust displacement. And Earth crust displacement, it's a little bit scientific, but a lot of people that use it sort of run with it. But it's the idea that the entire crust of the Earth can slip over the core. Like imagine an orange peel that's not connected to the orange inside, and the entire peel slips. And so they think that maybe if it's hit by a comet or the poles shift or something like that, the ice cap builds up and becomes really heavy. For the most part, it seems that it either doesn't happen or it only happens a tiny bit. But there's some people that think it's slipped like 15 degrees, and that's why Antarctica didn't used to be covered in ice. It used to be where Australia is, if you will. Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a couple of popular writers that have espoused this theory, and so it's possible that George is like having fun with that for his fantasy world. Yeah, ECD exactly, and that the far north didn't used to be there, and it slipped. But I doubt that's the case. But I've played with the idea of using like crackpot Atlantis ideas as fodder for writing my own fantasies. So I mean, it's not it makes a certain amount of sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
From a crackpot fantasy kind of point of view.
Yeah. Yeah. I pretty much agree. Yeah. For me, yeah. It depends on how you look at it. Okay. I thought the whites didn't like water. How did they attack? How did they attach the chain to the dragon and drag him up? No, and the other interesting thing is, how did they break free from like the little hole and grab Tormund when he was on the ground? If they can't swim and they just like fall in and yeah, yeah, it does make a lot of sense. They kind of set up in Hardhome. You think that what's going on is they can't cross salt water. So I kind of assumed that the lake was kind of, a saltwater lake. But then that kind of falls apart when you have the whites, in the water swimming, attacking
Yeah, no,
Tormund.
I do the lake mechanics. I think we're gonna have to accept that it was plot convenience primarily, and
Yeah.
that it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, so
So
that's just what we
here's a
gotta do.
question. Here's a good question that everybody's been answering. Do you guys think that Danny and John will have kids, and can there be another dragon, meaning a child? I assume. What do you think?
I think that Daenerys is fertile. I think that Miriam Mazdura's prophecy was hollow. I think that she can have children. I think at the end of A Dance with Dragons that she was pregnant, but she miscarried because of the berries that she ate. Um, so I think that she can get pregnant, and I think that she can carry a baby to full term. I think that she just doesn't believe that she can. She believes that the dragons are the only kids that she can have. But I do think that she could have kids. I do.
Yeah, I agree with you. Definitely in book canon. Although recently, the idea in the show that suggested that maybe John and Danny will get married and realize they can't have kids, and that'll be the impetus for them creating like a democracy or something. Kind of like because Tyrion's sort of suggesting that he's like, there's other ways to choose a king.
Break the wheel.
If you don't have children, right? So that would be a very satisfying ending, either in the show or the books,
Hmm.
to have to take that infertility, use and both of their inclinations for democracy, quite frankly,
Hmm.
and because for all the hate that Dany gets, she's concerned with human rights, bottom line, and so is Jon, and that's why Jon is able to see the wildlings as people and not enemies. It's been
Yeah.
a strong theme of both of their arcs, and so if they came together and established a democracy or anything other than a monarchy, that would be really cool in my mind.
Yeah. And people know what I think. I'm like, whenever someone asks me what side I'm on, like what great house, I always say I'm not on any of the great houses side. I'm on the side of, the common people. Because they're the ones that are going to have to rise up and fight for themselves in the end. No great lord is going to be able to protect them from the winter. While these high lords have been like burning their villages and burning their farms, they've been the ones that have really been suffering. It's not the people in the house, in the great houses like Sansa and Arya or them that have really been suffering. It's these common people that have like literally been starving and having, their daughters raped and, being starved and beaten and tortured. Those are the people that really suffer. And.
Yeah, because a lot of people have pointed out, like, why is Westeros stuck in the middle in feudalism for so long? Why haven't they naturally progressed? So maybe that's what we'll see. There's also a rising tide of like empowered females in A Song of Ice and Fire. Like a lot of women have come to power, and a lot of the women that don't fit in the like standard like demure feudalistic submissive female gender role have gained power and come to the fore. I mean, they're all over the place.
Yeah.
So you could it's like the seeds are there to change the guard a little bit is kind of what I'm saying. Is Howland Reed still alive? Yeah, he's still alive. Will he meet John? One would hope. Although now John, all John needs to do is meet Gilly.
Yeah. Yeah, and then she'll just read what she read in the book. God, fucking Gilly. She'll just like, I was reading this and I thought you'd be interested in hearing this random fact that doesn't relate to anything. God, whatever.
Thank you very much. Someone says, Ahmed says, Lucifer, your site is great. Had not subbed. Will right away. Thank you very much. Lucifer means lightbringer.com, everyone. And my YouTube channel is YouTube/C/Lucifer means Lightbringer. So it's all easy to find. If you just start typing Lucifer means Lightbringer into the keyboard box, things will come up related to me, I promise.
And if you've been watching so far, and because we've got almost 1,000 people here, feel free to leave a like. Thumbs up. Destroy the like button. With thumbs.
Destroy the like button.
Throw thumbs at this video. No,
I have to say, I just banned a pretty young lady named Tabitha because she was saying something about a 1-800 number. So I don't know. I don't think she was here to talk about A Song of Ice and Fire.
Call Tabitha. Call her 1-800 number. She'll talk about it with you all night long if you want.
Call 1-900-MIX-A-LOT.
Okay, Zipped Blue, who's actually a friend of mine in real life, asks, what do you think of Craster and the huge implication that the White Walkers can live peacefully with man if they reach an understanding? George mentions they are frozen she. Yes, everyone knows that. Everyone knows that, Chris. Shut up. Keep scrolling.
Everyone knows it because everyone's watched your awesome video about that.
No, Chris, I'll answer your question. Where to go? Okay. What do you think of Craster and the huge implication? Okay. I mean, I think it'd be interesting, and I think that's probably where the story is going. I think that they'll reach an agreement in the end. Because, I think that's so not George R. Martin to have it be like this epic, crazy battle at the end where like a bunch of, where they fight and then one side wins. I just really think that's not what he's going for, because he's always trying to demonstrate to you the futility of war and, the madness of war and the craziness of war and why it never really matters in the end. And I think it really makes more sense if they come to an agreement and they decide to share the world. But this time, men just have to remember to uphold their part of the bargain. Maybe it'll be more difficult to come to an agreement this time, but I think that's really where it needs to end. I think it needs to end in a pact. Maybe bind it with marriage. The Night King gets his queen, takes her back into the land of always winter. They have a couple of White Walker babies. The White Walkers live happily ever after. Maybe that's why he's coming in the first place, because he needs to reproduce. He needs a baby. They don't have any more women. I don't know. Crackpot.
So so this is what that Azor hype video that we linked to earlier. Is my mic on here? You can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So the Azor hype video that we linked to earlier that had the picture of that book with what looks like the corpse queen that might also be Nissa Nissa with the moon cracking and the potential sword. He was talking about the point of that video was Dany becoming the Night's Queen, which a lot of people have conjectured. And that is the book is implying Nissa Nissa becoming the Night's Queen, which would be very similar because Dany parallels Nissa Nissa at the beginning of the story when she it acts like the moon wandering into the sun and gives birth to the dragons, just like the moon cracking when Nissa Nissa was stabbed with Lightbringer, as we've discussed. And you can find more about that on my channel if you're not familiar with that whole series of arguments.
You
But the
know.
point is, if Nissa Nissa started off as a person of fire who, she was killed creating Lightbringer. But if she became the Corpse Queen, then she would then eventually become icy. And so that's the same sort of fire to ice transition as Dany would need to make if she were to become a Night's Queen figure somehow. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. I think it's a decent chance that it could happen. So
You
we were
know.
talking about the whole Two Moons thing, Quinn,
Yeah.
and I was telling you how there's like in the story you find moon maidens that are associated with fire like Dany or Melisandre, and then you find moon maidens like the Night's Queen that are associated with icy symbolism. Or another great one is Val, or Alice Karstark, or Jane Poole. So but Sansa is a character who starts off as a fiery moon maiden with her kissed by fire hair and her scenes at King's Landing, but then she becomes very Night's Queen like when she goes to the Eyrie. You know that scene where she's making the snow castle?
Yes. How could I
A
forget?
very famous scene. Yeah, it's a great scene. Everybody's analyzed it. A lot of foreshadowing in it. It's got the giant. She tears apart Robert's giant, and there's Peter stepping over the walls of Winterfell and all this other stuff, and Sansa slaying the giant. But in the middle of that, Sansa is making child's snow knights. Just the same language as Sam used to talk about the others.
Yeah.
So for those of you who aren't familiar, there's a line where when Sam comes back from the Fist of the First Men, and he's talking to Cotter Pike, and Cotter Pike is like, "Sam Tarley, is it true you killed an other? Were you sure it wasn't just some child's snow knight?" Meaning a snowman. But if the others in the show are snow knights that are created by the children of the forest, and if that's close to the books being true, then essentially a child's snow knight is just a symbolic way of talking about the others as created by the children. So Sansa in the Eyrie makes an ice castle that's supposed to be Winterfell, and she also makes snow knights, and it says it twice in that chapter. So essentially, she's acting like the Night's Queen, creating others. So that is the point of all this, is that Sansa goes from fire to ice. And that could be very much a foreshadowing of Dany doing that same thing. So I think it's very plausible. The symbolism likes it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I don't necessarily know if there's going to be a Night's Queen in the books. But we will see. And we do get that, there's a lot of questions as to who, if there is one, who it could be. Like some people have said Melisandre, because, they talk about, George R. R. Martin and the fact that he has a blue Melisandre in his collection, because he has a collection of like all the A Song of Ice and Fire characters. And apparently he has one that is exactly like Melisandre, but blue. So people feel like that foreshadows Melisandre as the Night's Queen. And then I've also heard, obviously Daenerys. I've heard a few theories for Daenerys, and I've heard theories for Sansa. But I'm not convinced that there'll actually be a Night's Queen in the book. But we will see. That definitely remains to be seen. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody will go full Night's Queen, but there's certainly a lot of characters who do things that sort of symbolically parallel the Night Queen. So just kind of like what I was talking about with Sansa. So
Yeah.
we shall see. And that gets back to what I was saying before about burning ice. Okay, the others are cold, but inside of them they have this cold star fire, and it's almost like they swallowed fire and turned it cold. And I have a theory that the Night's King is actually either Azor Ahai or Azor Ahai's son. And so this, if that's true, and just go with me here because I don't want to get bogged down in explaining why I think that's the case, but think about this. If Night's King is a dragon-blooded person and he's then impregnating the cold Corpse Queen, this is the act of freezing fire. It's taking fiery dragon seed and putting it in a cold womb. And the product was the others. Because when the Night's Queen and Night's King are quote-unquote sacrificing to the others, that means they were turning their children into White Walkers. And Night's Queen wasn't like Gilly or Craster's wives. She was a magical person. So they might not have needed to give their children to another White Walker. they might have made the first White Walkers. This is what I think Night's King and Night's Queen were doing, is making the first White Walkers, because she was already a magical person. So you take the dragon seed and then you put it in this icy sorceress's womb, and what they made was white shadows. I think they made others. And it's like, it gets back to the idea of freezing fire. And the similar theory is that the others are Valerians, or they are dragon-blooded people, in proto-Valerians that then became others. And it's the same pattern: fiery people turning into icy people, but now it's like a burning ice, not just ice.
Yeah.
Who is Azor Ahai? I guess we have some show-only watchers, huh?
Yeah. 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 Well, always. But yeah,
That's cool. I mean, that's cool. Everybody has different levels of knowledge. I'm not dissing. That's totally cool. It's a reminder that not everybody has all this stuff on the tip of their tongue.
Yeah, that's something that I always remember to do. Like, when people ask me questions about the book, I make sure to explain what I'm talking about, because I know there's always that percentage of people that have not read the books. Just out of curiosity, say in the chat if you've read the book, say yes. If you haven't, say no, and be honest. I want to get an accurate measurement to.
Hey Quinn, do you have a good
ratio?
Do you have a good Azor Ahai video that we can recommend to people who want to get like just the basic rundown on it?
Azor Ahai, not really, not exactly on Azor Ahai. I have done videos where I do mention those legends, like in my Mystery of the Five Forts video. I do mention some of the Azor Ahai legends in that, so you can get kind of a taste of it there.
Okay, well, there's a recommendation I will make for everybody. If you're a show watcher and you're not sure about what Azor Ahai is, you can check out Radio Westeros, which is a podcast, although they also have all of their podcasts on YouTube. And they have a great episode about Azor Ahai and what that means to Jon and Dany, and just sort of a basic overall rundown. So there, it's real easy to find. Just search for Radio Westeros. I think it's radiowesteros.com. They've got all their episodes labeled by subject. And if you want to look it up on YouTube, you can find it there too. So
I would say about 30 to 40% of the people here have not read the books. So.
And this is not an invitation to argue about which is better. That's really a meaningless argument. It's just a question to see, Be nice, people.
Yeah.
Be nice.
Yeah, no arguing. Don't fight. I never meant to start a war.
Somebody said Alt-Shift-X. Yeah, Alt-Shift-X is really good at doing like basic summary videos, so I'm sure he's got a good Azor Ahai video too.
Okay.
You're down with those folks, right?
Alt-Shift-X? Yeah, I've seen some of his videos.
Yeah, I like him. He's cool. He's really, like I said, really good at summarizing the basic stuff. And Radio Westeros was one of my favorite podcasts. That's one of the things that got me into the whole fandom. I've always loved them.
When it comes to podcasts, I listen to a lot of Star Trek podcasts. I don't really listen to any Game of Thrones podcasts. Yeah, but okay. I got a lot of questions in my video about just the logistics of everything that was going on. And, someone asked, how far do you think Gendry had to run from the Arrowhead back to Eastwatch? And, the thing is, the director even says that they weren't even concerning themselves with logistics and making the timeline actually work. So, there's really no answer for these questions. The answer is they did not give a flying crap. So, we're not going to get any answers for the logistics. There's no mystical reason behind all of it. It is literally they filmed what they wanted to film, and that's what they showed you. So, that's simple. Why was no one getting frostbite? It's very interesting, considering that, what's his name from the prologue? He doesn't have any ears because of, he's missing one ear. Or what is it? Does he? I don't remember, but I think he's at least got not one ear, and it's because of the cold. One winter, he basically got frostbite in his ears. His ear froze off.
You know what I like about the frostbite as a symbol in the story is that in the scene at Craster's, they draw a link between black steel and frostbite. They joke about Garrett, who's the guy that Ned beheaded in the prologue, and Craster asks one of the Rangers, he's like, "Oh, did the bite do that too?" And so he's saying, did Garrett lose his head to frostbite? And he lost it to ice.
Hmm.
So the idea of calling ice frostbite kind of makes a little bit of sense.
Hmm. Yeah.
And it carries on in the scene with the black axe and stuff. And yeah, anyways.
Yeah. I suspend my disbelief by buying into magic dragons and walking dead people. Well, all this is set up. All this is set up with rules, you know? Dragons have rules. All the magic in Song of Ice and Fire has rules. And the White Walkers had rules until this season when they threw it all out the fucking window. And that's where the problem arises, is that it has to be, I like to say internally consistent. It has to be consistent within the context of itself. It can't just change things and not give any explanation or reason. That breaks my suspension of disbelief. If it's all set up and it makes sense and there are rules that have been established and are followed, I wouldn't be complaining. You know? There's plenty of fantasy series out there, but that's how you distinguish the good ones from the bad ones. The ones that, set up these rules and then just completely just say fuck you to the rules and go completely against them, those are the ones that suck, that I don't read or recommend or like at all. See, that's the problem. That's the problem with the show now. They don't care about their own rules. Okay.
Yeah, I really would like to know how much is D&D versus how much the given director of an episode. I suspect that the director of the episode has a little bit of leeway here because some episodes make a lot of sense and other ones don't.
Yeah.
And it's just hard to know. Like I said, I just kind of evaluate it scene by scene. I mean, I don't expect the show to be quote unquote good as a whole. I just really don't.
So we're
And
getting.
everyone said this.
Yeah.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead. No, you go ahead and say what you're gonna say.
Everyone says it's the best show on TV. I don't watch like a ton of TV shows, but most TV critics don't think that it is. Like there's other shows that are doing a little bit more cerebral television or clever television, more unexpected television, better written television. Game of Thrones is amazing for what it is. I mean, it's amazing to have a fantasy story as a popular TV show at all. And there's times when it does really great. But I just don't know that people should just be so reflective. Like, it's the best show on TV. Don't it? I mean, okay.
I've
guess.
got to say this. You reminded me. George R. Martin, right? Okay, and I'll get your super chat, but let me answer this real quick. So George R. Martin, I feel like has some shade at Game of Thrones, right? So this guy has not blogged or talked about Game of Thrones, the show, in months. Like I haven't seen him say Game of Thrones or talk about Game of Thrones at all. And I'm trying to pull up his Twitter. But the other day, right? The other day he tweets and he's talking about this show called The Last Kingdom, which is another like medieval fantasy type show, right? And he says, "Oh, this show is so good. I cannot wait for season 3." So he's basically promoting this other fantasy show and not even mentioning his own show that's going on right now. And I just feel like that's extremely telling and extremely hilarious, and that gives you a little bit of insight into what he kind of knows about the show at this point. It's not his baby anymore. Doesn't even mention it. Doesn't even mention it, and he's spurning it for freaking Last Kingdom. I feel like that's a big F you to HBO. I could be talking about Game of Thrones and promoting it, but no, I'm going to promote this other show because this other show is actually good. And that's the thing. That's the thing. I don't think Game of Thrones is the best show on television anymore. I feel like at one point it may have been, but at this point there are better television shows. I like The Handmaid's Tale. It's not like the greatest thing ever, but the acting, God, the acting is solid. I really want to talk about The Handmaid's Tale later, maybe if I can get a chance on my channel. But yeah, watch that shit. You'll be blown away. But yeah, let me answer this super chat from Evelyn NG. Thank you so much for the super chat. Do you think it's significant that the Children of the Forest are all female and the White Walkers are all male? Ah, very good question. And see, the thing is, my answer to that is, do we really know that they're all female? Maybe they don't. Maybe they just. Maybe they don't. Maybe their males and females don't look that different from each other than humans. See, that's the thing is, we don't really know. We know that in real life they're all portrayed by female actresses. But do we know that they themselves are all female? I don't think we can really say for certain, one way or the other.
We don't know for certain. I do think it's very possible, though. I've wondered if it wasn't that the children. Well, okay, no. So there's in the lore of the world of Ice and Fire, it says that the children of the forest, the male and female, ward together. So it's implied that there's male and females. But I have wondered if the male children of the forest are actually whatever the green men are. And that the children we see are all female.
Well,
I've wondered if that's the case.
In the book, I'm pretty sure there are male children of the forest in that cave. Yep, I'm pretty sure there are.
It doesn't say. We only hear the voice of the one who's female,
Leaf.
and the other ones, right? And the other ones are nicknamed by the kids, so we don't know what their real names are.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I guess you're right. I'd have to go back and look at all those chapters again because I thought maybe Bran or somebody thought that one of them could have been male, but I like I said, I could be mistaken. It's not that fresh in my mind, really.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I've read those chapters a lot recently. I don't think there's any implied male children.
Okay.
I think there might be. He might be say like he couldn't tell. But then there's also the White Walkers are implied as male because they only take Craster's sons, and the Craster's wives refer to the others as the sons and the brothers of Gilly's baby. So that implies obviously male.
Yeah. So we're gonna go for a little bit longer, guys. We're gonna take a few more questions, and then we're gonna end this stream. We've been streaming for over 2 hours at this point. So we might go for another 10 minutes, I think. Get a few more questions in. So if you have some final questions, throw them in the chat. And, yeah. LML, if you have anything else to say that you just wanted to say, feel free to chime in, too.
Well, so one thing I think is interesting as somebody who cares about the books first, and I'm looking at the show to try to figure out what it might, portend for the books. One of the questions as far as others versus dragons is, what are the others going to do to fight the dragons? Because it would seem that the dragons can easily fly in and just melt the others. Because fire melts ice. But like I said, the others aren't just ice. They're like the burning cold. And so I've just wondered, are the others going to have some way to resist the dragon fire or extinguish the dragon fire or hurt the dragons? They got to have something.
Yeah.
And so the show gave us this spear. And, maybe we'll get a spear or not. But the others did have something to hurt the dragons. And I just wonder what that's going to be in the books. So that's a question for you now. What do you think the others will have to counter the dragons in the books?
To counter the dragons in the book. Let's see. I've assumed that it would be some kind of ice magic. Maybe it's the literal cold itself that affects the dragons. Because we haven't really seen how dragons react to extreme cold. We haven't at all. You know what I mean? And we know that they themselves kind of radiate heat. It's almost like they've got fire burning inside of them. Maybe the White Walkers in the books will have some way to extinguish that. We know that it gets very cold when they're around, when they're near. We know that they can do crazy things with ice. Maybe they could literally surround the dragon, they could block it off with a barrier of ice. We don't really know the full extent of their power and their manipulation of ice. So that's what I think. I don't think it's gonna be like a spear that you can throw. I think they might have spears made of ice, but I don't know if they're gonna take out a dragon with a spear made of ice. So
yeah, I'm curious. I'm curious because George never wants to turn his book into high fantasy and dealing with powerful magic, but he always writes it in such a way that it doesn't feel like high fantasy, quote unquote, high magic fantasy.
Yeah.
And so I just wonder, as we get towards the end and there is more magic, how is he going to write these scenes so that it maintains the feel of A Song of Ice and Fire?
Yeah.
It'll be interesting. I wonder if it's not like the winds and the mist and the ice storm. Like maybe the dragons are flying and they just Because in the Princess and the Queen, the dragons kind of hate the rain.
Mm-hmm.
Like they
Yeah.
in the battle called the Last Storm, where they fight Argilac, the Arrogant, the dragons basically fight on the ground because the storm was so bad they really couldn't fly, and the fire didn't do as well either, I don't think.
Yeah, because there's water. In a way,
Right. Whereas
water is kind of, the bane of fire in a lot of ways too. It's quite not quite ice. Well, it is. Water is the same thing as ice. The only thing that's different is the temperature. But
right. So and even if you so the others can bring this cold mist and these cold winds. So it's possible that when the dragons get closer to the others, they're going to have a hard time flying around and seeing and breathing fire and stuff. So that's going to be fun to see.
yeah, I got a super chat from Leslie Powell. She says, Melisandre has been confident in her ability to help win the war for the Dawn. What will be her role when she returns from Volantis? I did answer this question before, but I will answer it again because you did give me a super chat. And I think that her purpose is to sacrifice herself for like something greater, because I think she is looking for that redemption, and she needs that penance, and so she'll because I also think that she is someone that's ready to die. She's been kept alive all this time for a reason, and I think that her purpose will come soon. She'll sacrifice herself, for some reason to make something happen. Because we know that blood sacrifices are very powerful, and she is extremely powerful as well. So maybe there's something that could be useful that her death can bring about. Well, something that her death. See, God dang it, I'm getting flushed right now. You see, the thing with Shireen being burned, right? We don't really know if that's what melted the snow or not. But I think that it definitely helped. And, it's the same thing with Gendry's blood. We don't really know if that's really what killed Joffrey and is what killed Balon Greyjoy and that stuff. We don't really know if that's... Or Robb Stark. But the thing is, I think to some extent that, when you make these blood sacrifices, it sends something out into the universe. And it changes things and it affects things. So I think that by Melisandre sacrificing herself, it could, kind of tip the balance in, the favor of her team. So that's what I
for one think that Jon's resurrection is going to be a lot more complicated than it was on the show.
Mm-hmm.
I was really disappointed by how they did that. Melisandre basically washed his hair, prayed a couple times, walked out, and then Jon woke up, and that's it. And I think in the books, it's going to take well, for one, I think Jon is going to go into Ghost and start to merge with Ghost spirit. So we've got two things we have to do. We have to resurrect Jon's corpse, and we have to find a way to get Jon's spirit from his wolf back into his resurrected corpse.
I think Ghost must die.
I think Ghost is going to die. And if you understand the story of Mithras had a white bull that was a friend to him and almost, in a way, was a part of him. But he had to slay and sacrifice the white bull in order to be reborn. And there's a lot of parallels with Jon and Mithras. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if Ghost the wolf body has to die to be reborn. But the thing is that I think Jon's spirit will have started to merge with Ghost. Because we know, and this, again, for show watchers only, in the books they explain that when a skin changer dies, his spirit goes into his animal. And what happens gradually over time is the spirit begins to merge with the animal's spirit. And if too long goes on, the person will basically be lost into the animal and will only be like a little shadow. But if you were to if Jon were to go into his wolf, because in the books, remember, Jon is dead and he hasn't been resurrected yet, and that's where we're left off. So what's going to happen is we need to resurrect Jon's body. Jon's spirit is going to be chilling in his wolf, and we've got to get the spirit out of the wolf. So what's going to happen, I think, is we're going to get a merged spirit. It'll be a wolf man. It'll be Ghost spirit and Jon's spirit. They will have mingled a little bit, and then both of them will go back into Jon's human body. So even though the wolf body of Ghost will die, the wolf spirit will live on inside Jon, and Jon will be a walking ghost. That's the point of naming Ghost, is like it's Jon's ghost.
Mm-hmm. And
Got it?
there's no doubt that John is inside of that wolf in the book. I don't see how
No,
anyone can
no,
doubt it at this point. The last
no.
thing he's either says or thinks is Ghost. And then, you have Melisandre's vision where she doesn't understand it at the time, but she sees John go from a man to a wolf to a man again. And then you've got the Varamir six skin stuff that totally sets it up. And, yeah, so definitely John is inside of that wolf. There's no doubt about it. So, yeah, guys, I think we're going to get ready to wrap things up here.
Here's one good question from
Okay, we'll
Christy
take
Torelli.
another question.
Since fire cannot kill a dragon, can the other dragons even hurt Viserion? That is a very open question, whether or not the dragon fire of the dragons are going to just light Viserion on fire or not.
It's
What do
kind
you
of
think?
it's kind of like a paradox because the whites are susceptible to fire, but the dragon,
Exactly.
it can't be killed by fire. So, that's very questionable. I don't know.
So yeah, I would think that if Viserion is easily torched by the other dragons, it really wouldn't make
It
much
would
sense,
defeat
would
the
it?
purpose. It
Yeah.
would. So I think they will probably make him immune in some way. Maybe the Night King will give him. Whoa, maybe the Night King gives him ice armor, and it kind of deflects the fire of the dragons.
Yeah. We'll get
That'd
ice
be
farting
neat.
and everything.
Yeah, but yeah,
Well, let me
yeah.
just say thanks to everybody. Thanks for having me on, Quinn. Thanks for everyone who joined the chat. We got up close to 1,000 people there. That was awesome.
Hmm.
Lots of good questions. Thank you very much. And I will drop the links in the chat. But again, it's lucifermeanslightbringer.com, or just look up Lucifer Means Lightbringer on YouTube, and please subscribe. I've got all my podcasts on YouTube, but then I have this one visual video that I made called What Caused the Long Night. It's right at the top of my page. That's the first thing you should check out if you are interested in all of my stuff. Watch that first video, and if you like it, please share it. That's all I'm asking. Yeah.
Absolutely. And guys, if you've enjoyed the stream so far and you've been watching us, go ahead and leave a like. It really helps everything out. So throw thumbs at the video, up or down, doesn't matter, whatever you choose. I'd prefer a thumbs up though. And yeah, check me out on Twitter, Facebook, and Patreon. And yeah, like I said, subscribe for more ideas of Ice and Fire. Goodbye. We talked for about 2.5 hours. I feel like we covered a lot, answered a lot of you guys' questions. So
Hey, Quinn,
thanks
should we
everyone.
give a. Actually, there's something we should do. We should give one prediction for the last episode, because
Okay.
that was the title of the video, I think. What will happen next? And we didn't talk about that very much, actually.
We
And
didn't.
I also think it's interesting to notice that we've been given the previews for the next episode,
Uh-huh.
and we see only the dragon pit scene and a quick shot of the north.
Yeah.
It's an 80-minute episode.
Hmm.
Okay, now, again, there's lots that can go on at King's Landing, all kinds of side meetings and who knows what, and hopefully they'll take good advantage of that to have good dialogue. But I think they're hiding something.
Uh-huh.
Like the big ending, they're not showing us any previews of.
Yeah.
It's like the idea that maybe the wall's going to come down, or the long night's going to fall, or something awful like that, or a huge dragon fight, or fucking what do you think?
See, that's the thing. I don't know if I trust Cersei. I feel like something big might happen with Cersei in the Dragon Pit. I really do. Because she said earlier, I'd handle this like Tywin Lannister. What did Tywin Lannister do? He totally planned the Red Wedding. And you know how that ended. So maybe Cersei could be planning to kill everybody. Like, I really think I would not put that past Cersei Lannister. So like, well, so I feel like I think you could get a big moment in King's Landing with Cersei, or like
Yeah,
some
Cersei's
attempt at treachery.
the show version of Cersei is different from book Cersei, but it's still a really good character,
Uh
and
huh.
they've done a good job of making you believe that she's crazy enough to try anything at this point. So
Yeah.
it's kind of.
So what do you think? Do you
Well,
have any thoughts?
obviously, I'm fucking hoping for something along the lines of an eclipse, or the long night falling, or something like that. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah. All right.
But it could just be that the Rhaegar Lyanna flashback is that high point.
God, I hope not. I want more than that. Well, we'll see. Well, okay, I guess I'll say thank you for liking. I mean, thank you for watching, guys, again. And yeah, peace out. Gave you that little bit of extra on the end. You weren't expecting that, were you? Yeah.
Bonus round.
All right, guys. Talk
Peace.
to you later.